everyone to our demonstration with Sheila Davis this morning. We're really happy to have you all here. I'm Danielle Huvenars and I work at Westland Gallery, which is in London, Ontario. And we have an exhibition on with Sheila currently called In the Moment. It features Sheila's work alongside 3 other local artists. And we're hosting this event kind of in conjunction with that show. And yes, happy to have everyone here. We, as you'll all know, since you signed up for this workshop, this is a charitable fundraiser for Anova here in London. And all the fee that you paid to join us today, after the fees have been paid to PayPal and all of that, will be donated to Anova of London. We're still waiting on the final donation amount because we had a few people join us at the last minute today, but it's going to be upwards of $2,500 that we're able to donate to Anova, and we're really, really happy with that. Thank you all for being a part of this event. Anova is a really wonderful charity here in London. They are a joint merger between Women's Community House and the Sexual Assault Centre of London. And those services are more important than ever this year as we're facing so much more time in our homes. And so we were thinking about all the women and children and all the people that are impacted by violence in the home. And so this is a really important charity to us and to Sheila. They offer a crisis line, shelter, second stage housing, and a lot of supports, including counseling. I'm going to put a link to their website here in the chat. So if anyone's curious, you can learn a little bit more about Anova. If you want to see the chat at any time, you should be able to see it on the right-hand side of your screen. If you don't see it, look along, kind of hover your cursor over your screen and look for something that looks like a speech bubble, and that should bring up the chat option for you. Before we got started, Sheila posted her materials list for you in the chat as well. So if you scroll upwards in that chat box, you should find a downloadable PDF from Sheila that shares all of her materials. Sheila, do you want to touch on any of those favorite materials?
I'll go over the colors that I'm using once I start.
As we get started, okay.
Yeah, just to point out that we do have the closed captioning going. So if anybody wants to use that or needs it or wants to turn down their volume, they can use the closed captioning.
Yes.
And I won't be using all the colors on the supply list. That's my general colors that I use, but I won't be using all of them.
That's great. So we've had the honor of working us at Westland Gallery with Sheila for a number of years, and I've witnessed her paint a few times, and I'm really excited to share it with all of you today. Sheila is primarily self-taught painter, and so the style that you'll see today is kind of a culmination of all of her painting experience over many, many years. Hey, Sheila?
Yes, sorry. There was the odd person that didn't get their link, so I'm still checking my emails for people.
No problem.
Sending them links.
No problem.
And four emails now. So if I'm out of the thing here, if I'm looking down, that's what I'm trying to do. Okay.
If anyone's having difficulty with audio, try playing around with a couple different options. Make sure that the volume is up on your computer. Sometimes earphones are beneficial. Sometimes they cause problems. So if you have headphones in and you don't have any audio, try unplugging those. We do have the sound on just for my screen and for Sheila's for the duration of this demonstration. But again, using that chat box in the corner, everyone is welcome to ask questions at any time throughout the demo, and I'll be happy to read those out to Sheila. Make sure you get your answer. I'm just going to post the supply list again because some people don't seem to see it, so maybe it didn't post.
Still answering emails.
That's all right. We're gonna get going in a
I
second.
don't want anybody to miss it. That's the thing. Somebody's asking me for the supply list on their email. I suspect they think this is a workshop. This is not a workshop. This is
It's not a workshop.
You,
Today, yes.
I
Today
am
is a
not
demo.
teaching anything. I will explain my process as I go through, and you can ask me questions, but this is not a workshop, not a 4-hour workshop, no, for 115 people.
So I just posted the attachments in chat are never visible in devices. Thank you, Lori. So that would imply that if you're on a mobile device, if you're on a tablet or a phone, you're not going to be able to see that PDF of the supply list. Do we have everyone's emails, Sheila?
I do, yes, but actually if they go to my website where they purchase, where it says tell me more, and click on that, or any other workshop,
Yep.
yeah, it won't be on the demonstration one. If they go to an older workshop that's sold out, click on the tell me more and scroll down. My supply lists are all there on the website.
Okay, they're downloadable from the website. Yep. Wonderful.
Yes, yeah.
Wonderful. We have one question. Is the demo going to be available to rewatch later?
Okay, so what I'm doing is I am recording it, dual recording it. Usually what I do with a video like this is I have it available later on my website, like I did with Rose Garden. It will be available later. I'm going to do some voiceovers and enhance a little bit. Anybody that has bought a ticket to this will get a coupon with this amount off the final cost. And there's no indication that this painting is going to turn out. So there's no guarantees I do a good painting. So it will not be available for free, but there will be a discount for it after, because I'm going to work on it a little bit and edit it and do a lot more work on it.
Yes, yeah,
if it
that
works.
Sounds great.
Or you can watch me throw it in the burn pile.
Yes. Thanks very much, Sheila. All right, well, I think we will get started.
Okay. So if I disappear for a minute, it's because my phone's buzzing like crazy. I don't want anybody to get missed.
No problem.
So
I'll explain to everyone what you're seeing on Sheila's screen here. I'm going to take myself off of the highlight and just leave Sheila's screen up nice and large for everyone. So of course we see lovely Sheila in the left-hand side of the screen there. Got your painting overall or smock on, ready to go.
Mr. Rogers, you're not a real artist until you put your apron on.
Behind her, there's the panel that she's going to be painting on. And we'll discuss how Sheila preps her panels before we get started.
Yes.
In the top right-hand corner, we see the image that Sheila's going to be painting from today. And in the bottom right-hand corner of Sheila's screen, that's actually an aerial view of her palette. So everyone's going to be able to see her color mixing as we go along, which is really, really interesting. This is a great setup. We can see all the different elements that Sheila sees.
Can everybody see the entire palette? Oh yes, you can. So this to the left that you see where my hand is, you see that? This is my OMS container, just so that if anybody asks me how wet my paint is, if you watch how often I dip into that, then you'll see how wet my paint is. So are we ready? We ready?
I think we're ready.
Okay.
Do you want to walk us through? Okay. Let's start with the beginning stages. So okay. how you picked this image that you're going to work from today, and how you've prepped your panel.
Yeah. Hard questions, right? Okay. So when I get my panels, they're unfinished. They are Baltic birch. Some of them are from Desire, some of them are from a place in Toronto, wherever you can get them in this day and age. They come unfinished, so I stain the edges of my panel. I'll show you what it looks like. Hang on just a second here. So this is the little one for the thing, and the edges are stained, as you can see, a nice dark walnut. And after staining the edges, I put 2 coats of gesso, clear gesso, on the surface, and then give that a good sanding after a couple of days, and then 2 coats of clear varathane on the edges. So it's a nice finished look. None of my work needs framing. You can frame it if you want to, but it doesn't need to be framed. I work on panel for a couple of reasons. One of them is I love the feel of it. I started painting in watercolor over 30 years ago, and working on panel with the clear gesso on it has that feeling of working on paper. There's a controlled absorbency in it, and a little bit of drag, so it has that really nice feeling. It's also the most stable surface to paint on. It doesn't give oil paint is a brittle paint, and it keeps curing for its entire lifetime. So if it's on a flexible substrate like canvas, over time, you can see the paint chip off and lift off like the old master stuff is doing. So working on panel has its advantages. The disadvantages, of course, are the weight. When they get really large, they get very heavy, because the bigger you go, you have to use a thicker ply for the surface. So at that point, usually anything over 30 by 72, I will flip over to a canvas just because of sheer weight. Danielle doesn't like hanging the paintings in client houses. They weigh 75 pounds.
I'm getting pretty good at hefting your large panels onto the wall by myself, but yeah. Yes, I agree.
It's you gotta watch your shoulders. They can be hard on your shoulders. So this is the little painting that's being drawn. Danielle, when are we going to do it?
I think, do you want to do it halfway through? Just
yeah, why don't we do that? I'm thinking maybe this could be 3 to 4 hours. I'm not sure how long it takes me. I could finish it in an hour, but you never know. And I think we should plan, depending on length, on a break in about 2 hours. Is that good? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Grab a quick coffee, use the facilities, whatever you need to do. I know I have to go in my house. I'm in my studio in my garage. So that's the way I do my panels. And the image that I picked, let me just put that down.
I'm just going to address a couple questions for
sure,
1 second.
Yes.
So if anyone, I have highlighted Sheila's screen, so everyone should be looking only at Sheila's screen, but there are a couple comments that people aren't seeing that. So you can toggle your view from the gallery view, which will show you kind of everybody's screens equal sizes, to a speaker view. You can try that if you're not seeing just Sheila, though you should be. Sheila's, yeah, you should be. Sheila's screen has 3 components to it. So there's the picture of Sheila, there's the reference image in the top right corner, and the palette in the bottom right-hand corner. And there was a question of whether she was using acrylic or oils, and she's definitely using oils. Yeah.
Definitely using oils. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you've got your reference image, which is a photograph that you took, correct?
Yes. I always work from I teach a lot, and it's very important that you work from your own photographs. One of those reasons is that nobody sees what you see. And your job as an artist is to make other people see what you see. And so it's part of you got to go out and get your feet wet and get your own photographs and try and narrow down what it is that your muse and interest is. Mine is nature, obviously, chaos, wild untouched places. I don't go to pretty man-made forests where the trees are all lined up. I like a lot of underbrush and texture and stuff like that. And I try to get those the dancing light and the colors and the movement that are going on in your periphery. You see them from the corner of your eye when you turn your head to see, and they're gone. So that's what I'm trying to catch with my work. So lots of movement, bright colors, flashes of light. Texture.
Those are the things that you're looking for when you're called to paint a certain scene.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So
yep.
Are we good? We're good.
We're good.
Okay. So I'm over at my palette now. You can see my hand here. Because this image is fairly soft, and I'm going to try and keep it pretty soft. I did have a new rubber glove. Oh well. If you look at my palette here, I have, starting going clockwise, I have transparent yellow oxide. This is a turquoise. I'm not sure if I'm going to use it. Ultramarine blue, transparent red oxide. This is transparent orange from Gamblin. Naples yellow. I won't be using that one. That's from the other day. I'll just get rid of that. And I don't think it will. Might be using it. Let me get it up here though, so I don't grab it by accident. This is nickel yellow, gray violet, blue gray, Besner blue #1, and titanium white. So when I start painting, I start off very, very loose and very, very wet. And I start with lots of, I'm looking at the background colors, so the more muted neutral colors, and I start carving an image out of that. So you'll see me doing lots of lifting. I'll add some color on later. I'll add some calligraphy with some oil stick and try to make that surface as interesting as I can, bordering on abstract, because the human eye likes to see things beyond what are there, right? We like unfinished sentences, we like mysteries, we like puzzles. So letting the human eye finish the message that's on the canvas is very intriguing. And different layers of surface tension too. So drippy colors and oil stick and thick passages of color. So I play around with all that. I do not usually finish a painting in one day. I usually let it sit overnight. So we'll see how this is going to go. Okay. All right. So I'm going to start. I always start my first paintings. I am out of the picture now. And if at any time you want to see this straight on, just let me know and I can adjust this, right? It's on wheels, so you can see it there, but I have to have it where I'm used to painting from.
And Sheila is going to mention what color she's using every time she picks up a new color. So we will find out that information as we move along.
So I'm starting off with transparent yellow. I always start off with transparent yellow. It is a nice warm neutral color. I have three different, well, the brushes that I use are Robert Simmons titanium. They are a very stiff synthetic. They keep that knife edge for a very long time. They're a wonderful brush and they're available on my website. But they're a great brush. I converted a lot of people. So the sizes that I'm using today are, I'm starting off with a 1 inch and usually just for the first wash. And then after that, I work my way down in size. Again, starting off loose, 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 and tightening up as I go. So you can see my tub here of OMS, which is odorless mineral spirits. And I'm just using the transparent yellow oxide, and it's really, really, really drippy. And I don't use a huge brush because, can everybody hear me okay?
I think so. There have been some comments your audio is a little bit fuzzy, but just talk slowly.
Okay, well, because I've switched, okay, let me try and switch mics. Because I've got 2 mics going with 2 different things here. So how's that? Is that better?
That might be a bit better, yes.
Okay, all right. I'm not sure. I'm recording with 2 recording softwares and they're both using 2 mics. So this is a new, I've never done this before. So I start off with a smaller brush, and the reason I do that is because I get lots of movement going on my surface here with brush strokes. My painting I started painting, like I said, probably over 30 years ago. I've been saying 20 years, but I've been saying that for a long time, was with watercolor. And it still is a huge part of my painting process. I do a lot of negative painting. I do not start off dark and go to light, like a lot of traditional oil painters. I just work all over the place. And I start off very loose and tighten up, just like in watercolor. I use a lot of transparent colors.
Sheila, have you prepped with the clear gesso before getting started?
Yes. So this panel was prepped with clear gesso. When I do my gesso, I do it quite thick. I like the brush strokes that are underneath it. You can't really see it because it's close enough, but there's a lot of texture on this surface. My work has a very organic feeling about it, very unfinished and organic. And part of that is the clear gesso. The other nice thing about clear gesso is that when you're using white gesso, it's kind of a no-no to leave any of the white gesso showing on the surface. Where with clear gesso, you can leave the wood showing, or I say you can leave the wood showing. And it gives a really nice, like I said, an organic feel to the work. That's why I'm using a big brush, just getting this down. And you probably can't see it from here, but there's a ton of brush strokes on here already. Now, how is it? Are we getting glare or anything on this?
Nope, it's looking pretty good.
Okay, all right. It's a little hard on this side over here. I have a window just to the right of me, so there's always a little bit of glare on my screen here. And if at any time, so maybe when we do the break, which will sort of hopefully be the halfway stage, I will take a photo of it and screen share it, because one of the issues with Zoom that we found in all the teaching is that you don't see a lot of the subtleties in color and the marks and stuff like that. Everybody's monitor is a different color, and it's really hard to see all the little tiny brush strokes and all that interesting stuff that's going on.
Sheila, do you have a darker color that you're incorporating?
Nope, this is just transparent yellow oxide at this point.
Okay.
And I'm adding some elements of my composition. You can see I kind of followed the value. Right now I'm working on value. So I'm going to switch to a smaller brush.
So when we're talking about value, we're talking about the dark and the light aspects of the color versus hue when we're talking yellow, red, orange, blue.
Yes.
Right now we're just talking darks and lights.
We're just talking darks and lights. And if your painting does not work, the values in your paintings don't work, then the painting won't work no matter what color it's in. The human eye sees value first.
Absolutely. We used to do a activity when I was in school for art in painting, and we would take a picture of our canvases in black and white.
Yes.
And it's really helpful to see if you've got diversity in your values. Do you have your darks and your lights?
And now we can do that while we're painting with our phones.
Mm-hmm.
Life is much easier for artists these days. In the old days, we used to go out, take a photo, bring it home, get it developed 3 months later, and then you'd look at it and you go, what? You know, what did I see in that? Why did I even take that photo? What a waste of money. Eh? And now we don't have to do that. We can take a photo and come in and, I mean, you can paint plein air if you want to. I prefer to paint in my studio because I paint larger.
Someone's asking, you have in the past used a transparent orange instead of this yellow. I
haven't been using that so much lately.
How do you make that decision? What color to start with?
I don't know. My work has just progressed. It happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your work just changes. Trying to a little bit more subtle.
Mm-hmm.
I still use a lot of orange. Sometimes too much, maybe. So
nothing wrong with a favorite color.
No. I've just lately been starting with this and some more subtle colors. Okay, so I've got my basic structure down. So I've got my main dark tree here. I've got some other stuff going on, twigs and stuff like that. And this point, when I'm using a fine brush, what I'm doing is I'm making a note in the photograph of things I really like, because eventually the painting will take over and the photograph will be lost. But there are elements about the photo that I really like that I don't want to lose. That's obviously why I chose this image. So I'm making notes now, and I'm putting down any small lines that I like that I don't want to lose at some point.
Yeah. Colette says never too much orange, so she's your kind of gal.
Oh, okay, well, there's going to be orange in here, yes. Yeah, I don't know why I switched. I just started doing it. You know, your work changes a little bit. It's supposed to. Your work should change and grow with you as you do. So I'm just switched over to a slightly smaller brush now. This is the 3/4 inch glaze. Probably my favorite brush.
You favor mostly brushes that end in a square.
Yes, I do. I like brights. I like short, square. I like to have control. I don't want a floppy brush.
Yeah, yeah, with a
Long
long
and flawed
round
paper.
brush, yes, less control for sure.
Okay, so I've got my basic structure. I'm trying to keep this painting fairly soft. It is a soft painting, at least I see it as a soft painting. I don't know about you guys. So now I'm going into my ultramarine. Bear with me for a minute while I decide what I'm going into. Ultramarine, a little bit of transparent red, maybe that much. If you can watch me mixing, I'm mixing a dark and I'm using transparent colors because you get a real glow if you use transparent colors. That's a little bit of the transparent orange in there, so that just warms it up a little bit.
I think this is a bit of what has come through from your history in watercolor painting.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
A love
Yeah,
for transparencies.
absolutely. Yeah, that's not dark enough. Okay. More paint on. It's pretty thin. These dark spots, though, I won't be touching too much. It takes a lot of painting years to learn to put down a mark on a canvas and not play around with it. That takes a lot of guts. Because our first notion is to keep touching and keep playing. And part of the problem I find when students are starting off is it's usually because they don't have enough paint on their brush. So if you don't have enough paint on your brush, you know, you want to keep touching it. So we have this is almost a stained glass look on here. So I'm looking at values. So there's kind of a diagonal dark mark on the screen, on the image coming down from here. And then there's some more darks beside it. At some point, I will introduce a cooler color into this dark. There's another beautiful dark that I'm not using on here called asphaltum. Now, the paint that I use primarily is Kema. It's a Canadian brand out of Montreal.
Can you spell that for me?
K-A-M-A. Kema Pigments is the website. It's a good paint. Haven't had any major issues with it. They ship very quickly, which is always nice.
I've put that name in the chat for everyone if anyone wants to look up their products.
It's important to support Canadian industry. You know, if we all know during the pandemic when things were hard to get, right?
Absolutely.
If we had them in Canada, we'd get them faster. And our favorite company, of course, has now closed.
What was that?
That was Stevenson's Paint in Toronto. Family run. Wonderful paint. Terrible at business. So they ended up closing.
Someone's asking if this is ultra blue and transparent red oxide. Yes. I think you have, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and a little bit of the orange.
And a bit of orange.
A little bit of the orange to warm it up at first. When I'm mixing my color, I don't just mix it. I usually pull it into my other colors so that I have color harmony. When you put a general wash on your surface, like this transparent yellow or the orange that I used to use, it gives you color harmony, especially in oil, because that color is wet underneath. And everything that you put on top of it is going to have that color in it. So it helps with color harmony. If you're working in acrylic, you can pull your color into your palette that you already have. So you're picking up some of that color before. Very rarely will I ever bring a new color into a painting that has not been in it from the beginning.
Yes, so you want that cohesive feeling.
Yeah. If I threw in a color that I hadn't used before, it's like Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other, and it's very, very jarring to the eye. Now there's kind of a dark spot up here in the image. I don't know if you can see it playing peekaboo with those trees. I'm not putting that in. I say that. If I start putting it in, somebody yell at me. So I'm just getting in some warm darks. And now I'm going to play around with them a little bit. So I'm using ultramarine. Just bear with me for a minute while I figure out what colors I want. And I'm going to bring in a little bit of that turquoise.
Did you learn color mixing just through kind of trial and error, or do you have any?
Yeah, sort of. I used it. I learned it mostly in watercolor. It's that your pigment. Every pigment has characteristics, be it transparency. If it's what's that word? Sedentary.
Opaque or transparent?
Yeah. Opaque or transparent. Some of them separate, don't play nicely together, so they do some interesting things. All of these properties of color are more obvious in watercolor because you're floating in the liquid, right? So doing that, I learned a lot about color through watercolor. And you can really, you have to just mix your paint, right? And a paint color is not the same in every brand either. That's the other thing to remember. The Naples yellow is different in every brand. And the pigments are listed, what pigment is actually in the color are listed on the tube, but it depends where those pigments are from. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the transparent colors are now man-made dyes, but again, it depends on who your supplier is. And if it's a natural pigment like the earth pigments, it depends where they're mined. So all this stuff affects your color. So you can't be guaranteed that the one color that you buy in one brand is going to be the same in the next brand. So I do like to open a tube and look at the color before I actually purchase it.
Dive in.
That's the plan.
Yes. So Sheila, you started this cooler tone with your ultramarine, correct?
Yes, a little bit of turquoise and some Besner blue.
Okay, great, wonderful.
Now I'm just throwing in a little bit more Besner blue because there's some light blue colors in here. Part of being an artist is learning to see color. And there's a lot of color that's in things that we don't see. And I've said this to my students before, we don't get to travel like normal people. Normal people go on holidays and take pictures in front of the Eiffel Tower and the beautiful mountains and take pictures of their family and their friends. And artists analyze everything to the point where we exhaust our brains. and you just learn to see all these different colors that are in things.
Yes.
And the more you're trained to do it, the easier it is. And sometimes it's just sitting down. Now I've got two shapes here that are like railway tracks. So I'm going to have to deal with that later. We don't want railway tracks, telephone poles, body parts, faces. Don't laugh.
I know, it's happened.
You'd be surprised what gets put in paintings.
Do you use any linseed oil or walnut oil?
No, I do not. The only medium I use is OMS. I don't worry about working lean to fat, which is kind of an oil thing, because I generally finish my paintings within 2 days. So it dries as a package, right? It may set up the day before, but it's not really dry yet. So it's not something I've ever really worried about.
Mm-hmm. So you prefer that all working wet into wet?
I do. I usually let it sit up a day and come in the next day and put some lights on.
Okay.
But sometimes I like the paintings more at the end of the first day. It just doesn't seem right to finish a painting in 3 hours though. I'm just going to move. This is my garbage can. I'm going to move it over.
Do you wash your brush much?
No. I'm terrible at my brushes. At the end of the day, I just keep dipping them in OMS and wiping them off until no apparent color comes out. But I do sell brushes, right? So I have an endless supply here that I can just dip into if I want more. I generally, because I paint every day, right? Or almost every day, I generally wear a brush out very quickly. That's one of the reasons I like these brushes, is that they're the best ones that I have found so far that can take a lot of abuse. So I've brought a little bit of the gray violet into this now. This painting has a little bit of and a little bit of the blue gray. It has a little bit of a mauve undertone. This painting, soft yellow and mauve. So I'm trying to put that in.
What brand
I'm using a
is
fairly
safest
big brush and keeping everything fairly loose at this stage. I'm still using the 3/4 inch brush. I'm not being very, very careful about cleaning my brush in between because I'm still working on those muted background colors. That bright green and yellow that you see in here will come out a little bit later.
Yeah. We have a question. What brand of Ohms is safest from a health perspective?
Well, we all like, I used to use Stevenson's, of course. I've been using Gamsol, which is a gambling product. They are having some issues right now because they don't have bilingual labels. So they're working on that. I think you can get some smaller jars of it. So I use that. Apparently, Desairs has a brand, I think, and so does Cam. I think Rhonda said Cama's is pretty good. I haven't used it. I do have my windows open, but I use an awful lot of OMS. There's a lot of misconception about oil paint that it's bad for you. The old, you know, they used to use kerosene in the old days, and smoke too, and and they're still around. There's nothing toxic in the paint anymore. All those toxic pigments have been removed, and sorry, getting like a musician, I can't do it.
You're a little frozen for me, but I'm not sure if that's the case for anyone else.
Oh, I am, but I am actually hardwired out here.
Okay.
I should not be freezing.
Might just be my end.
Okay, hang on. I did have some Wi-Fi on.
Have you ever experimented with silicone wedges, or I'm going to expand on this question a bit, any alternative tools for paint application?
Yes, I do. I use, sorry, I'm just disconnecting my Wi-Fi. I am hardwired with Ethernet out here, so I shouldn't be too bad. But yeah, it's frozen, isn't it? Freak me out.
Yes, frozen.
Can you hear me all right, though?
I can hear you all right. We're getting a lot of people saying, yes, it's frozen. So let's just try to address this situation. Can anyone who still has their camera on turn their video off? That might help us a little bit here.
Let me try and switch cameras too. There, but now you can see me, right?
Yep.
Better now. Oh, it's still frozen. I'm wondering if it's my other software that I'm recording off of. Okay, hang on. Nothing's ever perfect, right?
There's always going to be a little technical glitch.
Always going to be a little. All right, is that better? Okay, I turned off the recording on the OBS. All right, we'll see how that goes then.
Perfect.
Maybe two things can't record at once. Everything's a learning curve. Nothing's perfect. All right, where were we?
So what have you used other than brushes to apply paint?
I've used these, it's called a color shaper. I don't put paint on with them. I take paint off with them or move paint around. That one's kind of old.
Okay.
Where's my other one? I had another one. There it is. Nope, that's my new one. Now, I will be using that a little bit later.
Okay. And you use that to make kind of these scrapes back through the paint as well?
Yeah, just to show you. Yeah. If you have any lighter branches, you can, you can just drag it up through that. And again, surface tension makes some nice little twigs and marks. I also use it to sign my name.
Yes.
So I could use.
Do you have an opinion on water-soluble oils? Have you ever used them?
I don't use water-soluble oils. I don't like them. Water-soluble oils don't dry any faster. It's just one more chemical that's added to the mixture to make them water-soluble. So they're not any more useful. I know what we were talking about before. We were talking about acrylic. So the paints now are primarily walnut oil based. The OMS, yes, it is a mineral spirit. So yes, you should work in a ventilated area. But the misconception is that acrylic paints are harmless, and they are not. You're working with plastics. Oil paint has usually 2-3 maximum ingredients in them, and they're all organic. Acrylic paint is all plastic, and there's up to 10-12 ingredients in them. So it's actually worse for you than painting with oil paint. And of course, as well, because you can't smell them. Well, actually you can. If you're in a room full of 20 acrylic artists, you can smell that paint big time. But because it's not as strong, of course, you can overdo it, right? So that's a big misconception that acrylic paints are better for you. They're not. So I've pulled a little bit of the Naples yellow into that blue mixture that I had.
Yep, so we're still working from that same blue mixture.
Yep.
You warmed it with a bit of yellow. And you have some white in the corner there that you're pulling in sometimes?
Yeah, I grabbed a little tiny bit, but probably a little bit too early. Now, pigment colors have an inherent value in them. Yellow is lighter than ultramarine blue, right? So you can work with the inherent value in a pigment before you actually have to bring white in to your image. I usually don't even bring white in until the next day. So you may not see it until a little bit later. So this is just straight Naples yellow. And I am bringing it in over here, and I'm not cleaning my brush again because I'm working with these neutral background colors. I'm not too concerned about it.
Where is this forest, Sheila?
Sorry?
Where is this forest, Sheila?
This one is probably Bark Lake. I belong to an art group, and we would go up to, we go away for weekends 3 to 4 times a year. God, we miss that. And it is up near Irondale. Beautiful. It's a leadership camp. So they have a great big room that we use as a studio, and they have hikes and great staff. And we would go up there in the spring, early spring, fall. Okay, so I brought some of that warm yellow in. I'm going to add a little, there's a lot of really subtle colors up in the sky that I'm just making marks in, and then they'll be blended in when I add some white later to that sky. So when I start an image or a painting, I say to myself, what is it that I like about this? What is the feeling that I want to get across? And of course, with this one, it's very abstract. This image was not doctored. I do play around with my images on my computer. It's a tool. Use the tools you have. I'm not a sketcher. I don't draw, so I don't do any preliminary drawings or anything.
We have a question here that's, do you ever work plein air, and any tips for simplifying your scene? Now, I know you're not big on plein air painting because you like to work big.
Yes.
And on panel. So primarily you take the photograph like we see here and work in your studio.
Yes.
But we did touch a bit on, for example, you're excluding that dark mark that we see up in the sky in your source image. So what do you look for when you're editing a forest?
Any strong lines that go off to the corners like arrows. That dark mark could get put somewhere else, but it's kind of right in the middle. It's kind of like a third eye, and I don't want that in there. If it wasn't in the middle, I might put it in, but there's some other darkness here beside it that I can use.
Right. So you're trying to encourage like asymmetry, would you say?
Yeah. You don't want anything right in the middle. You want the eye to move around and stay in your surface. So if you have any distracting lines, be it tree branches or big leaves or somebody's arm, if you paint portraits, anything that leads the eye off the surface.
Right. Yes, we want to avoid marks that take off into the corner like this.
In your surface, yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're going to buy the painting beside you.
Yeah, it does lead the eye off.
It does, yes, absolutely, yeah.
What computer do you use when you adjust like contrast and things in your photos?
I have a Mac, not a Mac, sorry. I'm a PC girl, always have been. And I just bought a new computer that's massively huge because I grew my laptop. And it has 12 USB ports, 3 terabytes, 32 gigabytes of RAM, and it's full already. I use Photoshop Elements.
Okay.
To edit my photos. I have a video of that on my YouTube page. Now I've got that little bit of mauve again, and I just pulled some of that green into it. So if you can, there's more color change on here than you guys are seeing. Part of that's the glare from my window. But yeah, I use Photoshop Elements, and I use it to document my work as well. I'm just thinking, every now and then I stop and think, right? You get to a point where like, what am I going to do next?
So someone's asking, how do you choose a blue looking color for trees instead of more green looking? And I do want to mention that because you're working kind of in the darks and the shadows right now, we have a lot more blue, right? Correct,
yes.
Sheila? Than we're going to have in the final stages of the painting.
Well, if you know my work too, I paint blue trees.
You do?
I paint blue trees. My trees are all blue. I hate that what was that color from the 1980s, you know, the in your kitchens, that hunter green. So I very rarely do an orangey green in my paintings. I find blue easier to live with. That is my personal preference. Not everybody's going to have that. So I mean, something to think about when you're starting to paint is your weaknesses and how you can work with those. So I'm pulling a little bit of transparent yellow oxide back into this mix. Now, my paint's pretty thin on my brush. It's not as runny as it was, but it's still pretty thin. Where were we?
We were talking about green trees and blue trees. Yeah, it's an interesting topic, especially I think in the days of so much social media, because it's easy to get influenced by what other people are doing.
Absolutely.
But learning what you do well,
yes,
and what you like to do is really important.
So I have, my weakness is yellow. If you look at my image, my yellows are desaturated. I don't keep any hot yellows on my palette. That was very strong. I don't keep any hot yellows on my palette. So I have either the nickel yellow or lemon yellow. The Naples is the warmest one. The only other hot one I might use is Indian yellow. I won't be using it in this one. I don't use it quite as much as I used to. I'm trying to kind of settle my images down a little bit. So I don't use any warm like cad middle or any of those yellows because I'm heavy-handed with yellow. I know that. So when I'm working with my photos, I desaturate those yellows. I don't play well with yellow. And yellow can be a very hard color to live with. And because I make my living doing this, I have to be aware of certain things. Ultramarine blue is a very reflective color. It's the most reflective color. If you use it straight on a surface, it will jump out over every other color that's on your surface, and especially on a computer. So we have to be aware of how our work looks in a digital environment, because in this day and age, that's where people see it first, right?
Yeah.
But I do not paint for, you know.
I always say, like, when we're working with commercial, like artists who are, you know, trying to make their living selling their work,
yeah,
what we're really looking for is that overlap, right?
Right.
This is something I genuinely love making that other people genuinely love collecting, right?
Exactly.
That's what we're looking for.
Yes. And I mean, you have to think about your art career as a business. And if, you know, you have to be aware of the Pantone colors of the year. Mind you, I find that they are not very accurate. So I brought a little bit of white into that nickel yellow. So I'm trying to put some of this lighter highlights down in here. So yeah, the Pantone colors of the year, but you know, from experience, we know half of those don't stay in anyhow. But you're just a little bit aware of that.
Yeah.
You know, I have colors I hate, so I won't use them. And generally speaking, too, female artists, you know, we use a little bit more feminine colors than male artists. Some of us do. It's just the nature of the beast.
And your color palette changes, of course, with what you're painting. You know,
Yeah,
your autumn palette is different from your spring. Yeah.
Yeah, it's primarily the same. I mean, I won't be putting any of those hot corals in this.
Mm-hmm.
I put in some of them. I'm getting to that point now where I should stop playing with those, because they can, you know, a color in your palette can be a crutch after a while, right? So I'm just putting a bit of texture in. The more marks that I put on my surface now, the more marks I have to play with later. Some of them will stay, some of them will go. But it just adds overall texture. Especially,
we have a question. How much pre-planning do you do before you start?
None.
And I was going to ask, because I know that of you as well. You like to dive in and see where the painting takes you. But has that changed from earlier in your career? Did you do more planning?
No. My first watercolor I took in a class with Edwin Matthews at Gallery on the Lake, and I was finished before he was. Mind you, I do stare at an image. I don't pick a photograph. I mean, I have thousands and thousands and thousands of photographs. I don't just jump in. You know, you muse over one for a week or so before you actually jump in and do it. So I'm living with that image in my head.
Yes.
For a while. Oh, you were asking about plein air painting. My idea of fun plein air painting is 10 cars in a circle, a case of beer, and loud music. I do enjoy it when I go out, but I prefer to work large. So if I'm out there, I'm going to do it with friends as a social thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that is much more experimental in the studio than out of the studio. Some people tighten up in the studio. I don't. I tighten up when I get outdoors.
Right.
So now I'm putting in some smaller marks. I'm just trying to put some shapes down here. I'm going to bring a bit of white into that. This is the gray blue, which is a beautiful neutral light mauvey color, a little bit of the Besner and some white. It's a very pretty color. I also too, you know, when people say don't buy a painting that matches your sofa, that's not something I agree with. Not because I think you should buy a painting to match your sofa, but you have an affinity for certain colors. And you know, you're going to choose those colors for your wall. You're going to choose that couch because you like that color, and you're going to choose art because you like those colors, not because it goes with your couch.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. I have often, and I think that sometimes people are worried about picking something that, you know, suits their space.
What the artsy crowd will think of them. Yeah.
But so often when you just pick what you like,
yes,
there is a unity between everything. Yeah.
And your tastes will change too. And sometimes they change dramatically. So when we lived in our former house in the 80s, we had that, you know, sponged salmon color on the walls.
Yes.
And I went out and bought a very large, dramatic, dark painting. I actually bought it at a garage sale. And I still have it and I love it. It's not signed or anything. And I had to repaint my entire house for that. But at that point, it was time to repaint. You know, that color was passing.
Right. So you allowed that piece to provide some inspiration for
absolutely.
a color change that was needed.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you got to repaint your walls every now and then, right? So now I'm going into a really light yellow color, warming it up with a bit of Naples, but I'm bringing in some white now, and I'm looking at sky. Whoops, it's not light enough. Often when I do my sky, because I don't do a lot of sky in my paintings, right? I don't have a great big vistas of sky. I think I'm agoraphobic. Big skies make me nervous. I used to do those. That was a long time ago. Been there, done that. I tend to do a darker color for my first layer and then go over it with a lighter color. And the reason for that is that having multifaceted marks, no matter how small they are, is a more interesting sky, right? The air is moving. You know, we have little dust notes in it and bugs and the lights flickering and the air is moving. So it adds a little bit of intrigue.
Right. So you find this technique avoids you from making too flat of a sky.
Oh, and as you can see, I'm not even worrying about covering every area right now. I'm just working on about getting in my big shapes. I don't often cover every area of my painting. They're a work in progress, like I am. I like it.
So there was a question from someone who wasn't with us at the very beginning, just on prepping your panel. So Sheila has a birch panel, correct?
Yes.
And she has prepped it with a clear gesso. And actually the sides that we see here with the blue painter's tape on them, she's applied a beautiful dark wood stain to the sides so they can hang right on the wall. And then she's just protected it with some painter's tape.
Yep.
And they've also asked, how do you prevent the panel from warping or bending?
Well, some people will apply GAC 100 to the front and back. I don't, because I work so large. I could spray varnish the back. I generally just forget. But when I first get the panels, they live in my studio for a week or so before actually getting around to prepping them. And if they're going to warp, I find they do that then. My studio is quite dry. So they'll warp before I paint on them. And if they do, I take them back, depending on the level of warpage. I mean, you can't control that to 100%, right? So if you seal the front and back, the front is sealed. If you sealed the back, but depending on where they're hanging, if you hung one in a cottage and shut it down, you know, like a real cottage, then you probably get a bit of warping, right?
Yeah. You have a good quality panel, though. I have not encountered warping issues with your work.
Really. The fellow that makes them for me in Toronto, every now and then, especially the larger panels, I will get one that has an issue, and I just don't use it. I will take it back. But they're considered, I mean, the smaller the panel, the less chance you have.
And of course, you can use a traditional white gesso on board.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You're just opting for clear because you like that texture of the wood coming through.
Well, and yes, I like the texture of the wood coming through. I like the clear gesso has a little bit more of grab to it, so it's got a little bit more grabs the paint a bit more than the white. The white has more reflectiveness, obviously, because it's a lighter background. But I really like, I mean, you can't see this, but I have a lot of wood showing through here right now that I may or may not cover up. So I'm just adding some of these lights and highlights in here now. It's just pretty wet. I hope it dries enough that I can play with it. So if it doesn't get 100% finished today, then I will post, send the finished image, put it on my social media and send it to you as well, because it, you know, depending on how the paint sits, I may have to come back in and touch it tomorrow, but I'll try not to. Sometimes I like this.
Is this a 30 by 30, Sheila?
This is a 30 by 30, yes. And if this painting works, we're going to try and auction it off with the proceeds.
Yes, to support Anova as well.
Yeah.
So we have a question of how large you go. And Sheila loves to paint large. These 30 by 30s are on the smaller scale of what you often do.
Yes.
You've done 5 by 5s, right?
No, I've done
Or
50.
no,
by
54.
60. Yeah, I can't get a 60 by
54.
60 in my van.
Yes, we have the same issue.
So 54 by 60. That one that you have, I think, is 54 by 54, which is a really nice size. And then
I love that
rectangular, I've
size.
gone up to 48 by 72. I would love
Any
to go.
advice for someone who paints small now but is looking to go larger?
Wine. You just kind of have to do it. You just, loosen up, use more paint. I think that's a big thing is people don't use enough paint. I've already just in this little bit used about 3 inches of white paint. I go through a lot of paint. And that's
Right.
basically it.
They might even look at it as scaling up everything, right? You're scaling up your canvas, so scale up your brushes, scale up the quantity of paint that you're using. Yeah.
So now I'm going to bring a little bit of that orange in. So I'm going to bring some Naples yellow, a little bit of that orange. The transparent orange is very strong because in the top right hand corner, there's a little bit more intense color. And notice I put a mark down before I actually commit to it, just to see what color I'm using and if it's strong enough. Nature has a lot of orange in it. There's orange everywhere you look. Most yellows are very heavy on orange. I learned that the first time I wanted to paint my walls in my house a soft sunny yellow color, and went to a Benjamin Moore store to get the paint mixed, and he kept saying, you're looking at lemons, you need orange in the color for it to be warm.
Do you listen to music while you paint?
I do.
Or listen to
usually music? Yes. Anything and everything. John Pride.
Depends on the mood of the day.
John Pride, Neil Diamond, Led Zeppelin. It's a mixture. Spotify is my friend.
Yes, for many of us. Someone writes, white cools off a painting. How do you avoid that, or are you okay with that?
Sorry, white?
White, cooling down colors. Do you find that as an issue?
It doesn't cool down colors. No, it brings the value up. But what happens, it can wash out a color. So there's a term in art called knock it down and bring it back up. So you bring white into your color to lighten it, and then you very often have to add a little bit more of that pigment. That's why it's beneficial to use pigments with inherent value as opposed to just using white. So this transparent orange I'm mixing with my Naples yellow, which is lighter by nature.
Right, so if you can lighten a tone with a pigment, another color,
yeah,
that's preferable, I guess, or at least something to incorporate.
If you've lightened it too much, just add some more of the color. What's that saying that yellow and blue don't make green? Because it depends on what blue and what yellow you're using. That's the other thing I do is I do not use a tube green. There are no tube greens in my paintings. Don't know if anybody noticed that. I've always mixed my own greens. I'm going back into my darks.
Someone's asking what the pigment code is for your trench.
Sorry?
Oh, you just went for a second there, but I think it's my computer. Someone was asking about a pigment code for transparent orange, but if you scroll all the way to the top of the chat when we first began the demo, you'll find a downloadable PDF that is Sheila's material list. It includes all her paint colors there.
The pigment code for transparent orange. I don't know, I can't see it. My tube is all squished. It's probably
that's okay.
Pigment
it can be found in that document.
It will be on the camera website. So what happens is you lose some of your darks when you get into when you work with your painting. So now I'm putting some of those darks back in. My brush is a little bit drier. So now I'm just bringing in some of these really darks, because you can't see the light if you don't have the dark. I'm bringing a little bit of that transparent orange in with the ultramarine blue, and it gives it a bit of a green tinge. Another beautiful, nice dark is asphaltum, which I use sometimes. And that's a Cama color. I don't very often use cadmiums or any of those heavy opaques. I prefer to use the transparents and add white, but I have used cadmium. You have one image, Slapsticks, that long thin one. It has big gobs of cadmium orange on that. I was channeling my Brian Rutenberg that day.
Yeah, it does have a different feel than the other pieces.
Probably $60 worth of paint just in that orange on there. It's a beautiful color, but it is an opaque, so it doesn't have the same glow to it that the transparent,
right?
Especially your darks. If you can keep your darks transparent, you will never get mud, ever, because the colors layer on top of each other like stained glass.
So is that asphaltum semi-transparent or transparent? Yeah, that's the answer there, I think.
Transparent color, yes. Yeah, Cama
Yeah.
has a lot of transparent. They have another warm red that's nice called hemoglobin. It's color blood. It is. I don't use it a whole lot. If I do use it, I usually use it straight to charge a dark color. I don't know, that's a watercolor term. If you have a dark area and you just hit it with another temperature, you can make your dark passages, your shadows, very interesting by playing with the temperature within those shadows. And hemoglobin's a beautiful color for that, but if you hit it with white, it turns this Pepto-Bismol pink color, which is kind of awful. So I don't use it a whole lot, but you get into a rut with your colors on your palette too, right? It happens. You get comfort.
Right, so you can add something new and experiment.
Yeah, well, sometimes one of the best things to do is when you're out and you've forgotten a color, and then you have to either learn how to mix it or you start using another one, and it's a good lesson. So this dark tree, I kind of lost that guy before. I'm trying not to stand in the way, and I know I should just be able to paint on my knees, shouldn't I?
So I just want to say, for anyone who's newer to painting out there, when we're talking about transparent and opaque, every paint color that you purchase at the art store is going to have its own innate transparency or opaqueness. Some of them are really thick, really opaque color, and some are these beautiful transparencies. And so that is kind of an innate part of that, working with that paint color. And Sheila's favoring those transparent colors, so you can do a bit more of a, it's not a formal glazing process, but you get a bit of that effect, right, Sheila?
Glazing process, the first layer has to be dry. The transparent colors are greasier by nature too, so they move around nicely. So now I'm that smaller brush in and just make sure that I don't lose some of these neat little twigs. And one of the questions I get asked the most is, how do you find your style? How do you find your voice in painting? And the only way to do that is to paint, and paint every day. And, after a while you have to, God, people kill me when I say this, you have to stop taking lessons. Once you know how to paint, once you know your medium, you have to just paint to find your voice. Right? Because if you're constantly painting with the same people every day, or often, you're going to just paint like them. The only way to find your real voice is to paint uninterrupted in your studio. And everybody has a specific style, and well, not a style, but you have a mark that you make, just like your handwriting, right? Your brush strokes are your handwriting, and nobody else can copy that to that degree. And I don't know if you can see a couple of the ones that I've just made. I don't like my particular mark that I make, but I can't do anything about it. So I don't know if one of the things that you notice, today, is I have not ever once blended my colors. I'm making marks. I'm laying strokes in on top of each other, but every stroke on here is different. I have never gone like this. And what happens when you do that is, especially with oil paint, is when you're painting with oil paint, every time you put down a color, you're picking up whatever is on that palette because it's wet, right? Oil paint's wet. If I was coming back in this tomorrow, I would be really, really careful about cleaning my brush a lot because I'm getting into clearer color tomorrow. I don't know if I'll get this done today. I don't like that mark I just made. Did anybody notice what I just did? There was a major compositional error.
Walk us through it.
Okay, so I have this line here and then I have these kind of wings coming off. So it almost looks like a feather arrow coming off here. I don't know if you can see it here. I'll turn this. It's probably time to do this a little bit. So I have two here that come down to a point here and two here that come down to a point. And so I'm going to have, I've just noticed that. So I'm going to deal with that. So that's how it's looking so far. See if we can kill this a little bit without, that's another artist term, is killing things. We're violent people. It's coming though. So now I'm picking up some of that gray violet with my dark brush.
Any major influence that helped you?
Yeah, when I
Sheila, are there any major influences that developed yourself?
When I was painting skies years and years and years ago, before my time with you, I think, Danielle, with the gallery, there was a Dutch artist that heavily influenced me. Luc Liestemaker, I think was his name, who did these wonderful abstract skies. So he was a big influence. And then when I moved into doing the Marsh and Wetland series, Kathleen Earthrowell, he's passed away. I don't know if she's even painting anymore. She was a huge influence. And now a lot of the work that I love now is quite abstract. I love Krista Harris's work. I could be going abstract. You have one in the gallery that's quite abstract. That big one. But I like my images to have some sense of what they are. More comfortable looking at an image. I mean, I love pure abstracts, but not everybody's comfortable doing it. And I'm not there yet enough. To start a painting without, I just did it again, without a jumping off is very difficult. I need an image to get me going.
Fair enough. It's beautiful.
It's coming. It's nice and soft. And
yeah.
That's what I was trying to do, was keep it soft and lively. I may have to put out some more Naples yellow. Oh, and that's what I was going to do, was find my new Naples. Excuse me, I was getting organized and then I was distracted. How many people do we have online?
We have 84 people here.
Okay, good. A little story this morning was that I always thought that my Zoom account was good up to 200 people, and it was only 100 people. I should check my email in case there's anybody that didn't get in. So I went online and sorry, I'm just going to send a link to somebody. So I went online and what was I saying now? Sorry. Oh, and I upgraded my Zoom account so I could have 300 people. And they said that it was going to be $270 a year. So I did it because I'm already paying $200. So it's not a big deal. And then they charged my credit card $2,700.
Yeah, so we're gonna sort that out.
we got to sort that out. So So the fact that it's under 100 people is not bad. We did sell 115 tickets, which is really cool.
Yeah, it is. We're really happy with everyone. And of course that those tickets to today's event also get you an entry into the raffle to draw for one of Sheila's 12 by 12. And we're going to do that right after we take a break about midway through this demo. Jan's asking, how many brushes do you use at one time?
Okay, so my favorite brush is the number 6 and the 3/4. That's what I've got in my hand right now. I have 2 of them. I have, I always use my favorite brushes. I have one for light colors, one for dark colors. So I can wipe this brush off and go into a color of the same value, and it may affect the texture a little bit, but if I were to pick up a light color with the dark colored brush, then I'm going to get some ick. That's a technical term, ick. So I do keep one brush for light, one brush for dark. If I was doing, if I needed a pure color, I'd pull out a clean brush.
Right.
So for those two, the number 6 and the 3/4, I generally have 2 brushes going while I'm painting. The first one, the number 1 that I used, was just for that first initial wash of transparent yellow. And I haven't had to use it again because this is not a big painting.
Right, so you're using the smaller side. That kind of comes back again to that question of scale, and that your brushes are going to be relative to your canvas size.
I mean, the 3/4 inch brush fully loaded makes a big stroke, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's again, it's your brushes and how to use them. You know, your brush has got 3 sides to it. It's got you can use your brush like that, on an angle. If you do it on an angle like this, you get the same stroke that you would get from a filbert. Filbert has got a rounded edge to it. That's right. That's getting dirty there. So it's a bright is a very versatile brush. Sorry, questions?
It's a big question.
Okay.
Do you have any advice for someone wanting to do art for a living? I've made a few sales, but not near full income yet. How do you deal with doubting voices that say art's not a career?
Divorce them. And take all their money so that you can support yourself while you're learning.
What gave you the confidence? The year that you decided to do painting full time, what was that decision like for you?
I don't know why I did that, Mark. Don't do that. Mine was kind of it was tricky. I've been painting for years. I consider myself a professional artist long before I was painting full time, because when I worked at a timeshare resort, and I had worked there for 20 years, 27 years or something. And I used to work evenings. So I painted all morning and then I went to work. What I didn't have was a family life. You know, I was always working Christmases and holidays. So I always considered myself a full-time painter, even when I really wasn't a full-time painter. And that place closed. You know, timeshares are a dying breed, right? So that place closed. Sorry, I'm just trying to decide what mark I'm doing here. Closed. And at that point, when it closed, I was making from my sales what my paycheck was. So it was a pretty easy transition, I have to admit. It was I didn't have to go without food for a while. I mean, I do have a husband. I'm not the sole provider, but I pay half the household bills. So, but once I started painting full time, like full time all day, and getting into teaching a bit more and all that stuff, then my sales increased. And I stuck to it, right? Galleries want longevity. They want to know that you're in it for the long haul. They don't want to invest money in you and then have you decide that you're going to go to Florida every year for 10 months and not give them work, right?
Mm-hmm. You have absolutely producing large bodies of work is a big part of it. Yeah,
you have to look at it like a job, right? I mean,
absolutely,
you paint where you're going, but Yeah, I mean, there are responsibilities and there's a mindset. You have to go out every day, look at it as a job, go out to the studio every day.
Mhm.
But you've got to miss things with family because you've got stuff to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big part of it. Like to that person asking and anyone else wondering, I mean, it's definitely a career. We can vouch for that for so many of our artists at Westland Gallery.
Yes.
But it is, you know, you are starting a small business and you need to be looking at it that way.
Yes.
If you want, you know, to be earning your full income from your artwork.
Yeah. And I mean, and like anything else, people think it's an easy job. It's not. When you're self-employed, there's no days off, right?
Mhm.
You're working 24/7. People say you're on your phone all the time. Well, yes, because in the evenings when a couple's having a glass of wine together and looking at their walls, that's when you're going to sell a painting.
Yeah,
You got,
that's true.
you know, you can't say, "Oh, I'm not going to check my phone tonight." It doesn't work that way.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so I'm just so I'm
Yeah,
mixing.
yeah, it's absolutely a career and it has all its challenges,
Yeah,
benefits of course too, but challenges as with any job. So,
of
but
course.
every artist is going to find, you know, what's that balance for them,
Yes,
for
absolutely.
sure.
It certainly.
Someone mentioned your book here.
Yes, yes, yeah. That's the other thing. Buy my book. It's a good book. I
What's your book called?
don't buy too many of them because I have to order more. It's called Beyond the Easel. And I wrote the book. There's a link on my website. I wrote the book because I was jury for, so I'm just going to show you what I'm mixing now because I know somebody's going to ask. A little
Yes,
bit of the
absolutely.
turquoise, a little bit of the ultramarine, a little bit of the Besner blue. And I'm just getting a nice mid-tone blue, almost like a cobalt color, but a little bit cooler. It's just a nice color. So I was jury for a major art organization for new memberships. And some of the stuff that was sent, I was disgusted with. Somebody sent their CV, or not their CV, their artist statement. They'd written it on a napkin and took a picture of it and sent it in. And this was a national art organization. And that, I mean, if you want to be taken seriously, that's not what you do. There's a particular way to write a CV. You do need an artist statement. You do need a website. I know a lot of people think you don't need that anymore with social media. Social media is wonderful. It's not yours. All those people following you, be they 10,000 or whatever, don't belong to you. They belong to Instagram. And if you don't have the mailing address for those people or contact information or touch base with them. If something happened and your account was deleted or something, then you've lost all those people. So there is a way to do things, and there's an order to do things in, right? You have to start at the bottom and get ready. You don't want to start applying for galleries that want your website if you don't have a website. So you have to be ready.
So your book kind of walks you through the business side.
Walks you through the business side of it. Yeah, it talks a little bit about insurance and doing your books and taxes. Nasty, dirty word, but necessary. I've mixed this blue
all part of it,
which is not something I normally do. So there's some light.
Sheila, are you using less ohm?
Yes, I am.
At this point,
getting into more of the thicker paint. If I was doing this over 2 days, this is probably the point at when I would leave it soon. Simply because I don't like to overwork things. But I'm not doing that today, obviously.
But yeah, if we're working all in one day on a painting, so if you are big into plein air painting with oils, or you're trying to do something like what Sheila's doing today, you're going to be working thinner at the beginning into thicker paints towards the end, right, Sheila?
Yep. Yeah, that's kind of the rule with oil is thinner to thicker, which is, they call it lean to fat. So OMS makes it lean, and fat. So if you add oil, so if you're like a traditional artist that's doing like portraits or something and you're glazing, then you're going to be using oil because your paint's going to be drying between the layers. So I'm really darkening this area up now. Wasn't dark enough before. So I'm just darkening this up, and then I will play around with the temperature in that area. So I'm going almost pure ultramarine, but my brush is dirty, my palette's dirty, my painting's dirty, meaning it's not pure ultramarine. It's got those other colors mixed in to it. And then I can play around and lift some colors out of this, because the dark shadow that's in this image, there's a lot of stuff going on in there. There's a lot of temperature. I probably put some light into here too much. So it's a little muddy up through there.
So questions here. Do you ever reuse paint over a board that was previously painted on?
No.
If it didn't work out?
No. And that's because I like to start with transparent. So what I do, the nice thing about working on panel is you can let it dry and then smack it with paint stripper and strip the paint off. I just did that with one the other day. It takes it off almost down to the very bottom.
Right.
And then I just gesso it again.
Yes, and then that's your preference because you want to be able to use that clear gesso.
It's not a good idea either, right? I mean, yeah, it's not a good idea to go over older paintings. They're not as stable, and it's also a failure to me, anyhow. So if I was painting over it, then it would be.
Do you get some catharsis from taking stripping the unsuccessful painting off?
When I used to paint on canvas once a year, I would often keep the stretcher bars and buy canvas and restretch them.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would do that anymore because everything's cheaper now. But once a year we'd have a big bonfire and burn all the failures. It is so cleansing to do that.
Yes, absolutely.
It's very cleansing. It's
sometimes you got to toss those unsuccessfuls. Yeah. You are wiping your brush on paper towel intermittently.
Yes.
And so is that just when you're looking to make a change in color?
Yeah, or I've got too much paint on my brush, or I'm changing color. Yes.
Yeah.
Because I'm picking up the color that's underneath here now. And I don't want to have big globs of paint on my brush.
Yeah. And someone's making mention, paper towel, avoid fire risk. And I know there's concerns with mineral spirits.
Yeah.
Of fire. How do you handle that?
I've been lucky. I just have a garbage can here. It goes out once a month. I put the lid on it every night. I don't have a whole lot of OMS on my paper towel.
Okay.
And I've just been, I think it's more rags. Paper towels dry pretty quickly, right?
Yeah. I think it is more
rags. Yeah, I don't use rags. When I'm teaching, I don't allow rags in the studio. They have to hang outside. They hold a lot of smell too, right?
Yeah, they do. So if you do have rags and you have mineral spirits, you need to make sure that they're drying out.
Yes. So
safely because they are fire risk.
My brush now, it's just paint, and which is walnut oil.
Yeah.
Now they do say that all oils will, do it, but and there are people that talk about environmental concerns, cleaning all that other stuff. But if we want our paintings to last, you can't think about that. Now the oil paint, if the world were to end tomorrow, which it may, the oil paint, because it's an organic material, will this will rot and go into the earth, right? The board will rot. Yes, the gesso is acrylic, but it's an underpainting, and it's not that, it's got a lot of tooth into it. It's a different makeup than the actual paint. Now I'm pulling in that light blue into that dark color just to get a different kind of, it's almost a sea glass color. But in acrylic painting, the canvas will rot, but then you'll have these sheets of plastic sitting around from the acrylic, right? Because it's a plastic. And I've seen there's a lot of artists that will paint in acrylic, and they put they start off in acrylic and then they put oil over it, and they think that, okay, so I've covered the entire underpainting with oil, so they call it an oil painting, and it's not. It's a mixed media, and you have to label it as a mixed media, and you have to tell whoever is buying your painting what it's made up of, because you really don't know. You don't know how famous you're going to get, right? And someday that painting may need to be restored, or you know, if somebody has a fire in their house and it needs to be cleaned, they need to know what is the makeup of that painting. So I mean, if people have the information, I tell them exactly what brand I use so that they can go find the makeup of the pigment. I tell them what varnish I've used. All that stuff is important for people that are buying your painting. I'm just looking, seeing how things are going here. Did I say I would take 4 hours to paint this?
Are you making any decisions differently today, knowing that you're not going to be letting it set up?
No,
and
not
coming
really.
back?
No, very often when I've done a painting and let it set up, I kind of wished I hadn't, and I just kept painting. I've had some that I've just kept going, that I've painted at for like 8 hours, really big ones,
Yep.
because they did have that nice soft feeling and it was working, right?
Yep.
When it doesn't work and it needs to set up is usually when I have too much paint on. Too much paint on my brush, it starts to get slippery and goofy and
Right.
yeah. I am stepping back now and assessing my composition at this point. Just seeing what I need to add anywhere. I want to put some warms into here. Now you probably can't see this. I'm putting the transparent orange straight on top of this dark, and it's making a temperature change in this area.
Yep. I can't really see that clearly on my screen. I'm not sure what everyone else is seeing.
And that's the issue with Zoom, is that you don't see this subtle stuff. And when I teach live, of course, when I'm done my demo, everybody comes running up and, you know, sticks their face 3 inches from it. And you can see all those subtle marks.
Right.
You can't see that with Zoom, which is why I will, I'll do an upload.
Take a picture.
During, when we take a break.
Yeah, because one thing people will notice looking at that photo that we can't see right now is because of the way that you don't do a lot of clean brushes, there's these just beautiful variations in a lot of your color strokes and layered color that we may not see right here.
I feel that painting should work from every distance. They should work up close. They should work from a distance and be more interesting the closer you get.
Mm-hmm.
There are some paintings that are quite abstract, and when you get up close to them, they just look messy.
Yeah.
And to me, they should work from every level. I always think of paintings hanging in the hallway where we're lining up to use the ladies' room. Something you don't get when you're a guy. And, you know, as you get closer and closer, you're looking at a painting. And then as you're getting closer, you're seeing some of these subtle brush marks that are becoming more and more interesting.
Right.
Little explosions
Experience
of
with each
subtle
step.
marks.
While you're looking at your painting, kind of making these decisions, we have a question of how do you determine if a painting is a failed painting?
Well, I mean, if I don't really like it at the end, sorry, I'm just getting a glass of water. I mean, a drink, not a whole glass. Not every painting is going to be perfect. When is it a failure? When it's gone the rounds of every gallery and come back. Not every painting finds a home, right?
No.
I have some that I don't particularly like, but that doesn't mean that somebody else won't like them. So I always give them a little bit of time. I find that they are failures when I'm painting because I feel like I should paint, but I'm really not. I shouldn't say not in the mood, because when you do this for a living, you have to paint even if you're not in the mood. But usually if you're looking through your photographs, you're going to find something that will get you going, right? But every now and then there's a day when there's just nothing, right? Nothing's working, nothing's putting you in the mood to paint. So you just grab an image and use it anyhow, but you're not really thrilled with it. And that's usually the one that doesn't work, because you can't force creativity. Or, and I see my students do this, they will try, now you can see that was an orange paint. See what it picked up on my brush though, eh?
Yes.
That's the colors it picked up. So I'm wiping that off. You can't be concerned about money when you're doing this.
This brings us back to a question that we got earlier that I forgot. it was just regarding how do you get yourself to paint every day? And in those moments when you're facing a bit of artist block or you don't want to go into the studio, how do you get yourself to the easel?
Well, I just go. I grab my coffee and go.
Grab your coffee and go.
Grab your coffee and go. You have to do it. You have to put yourself in that mindset that you're going to work. It's 9 o'clock. You're going to work. You just, I mean, painting is a very small part of being a professional artist, right? There's books, documentation, photographs, cleaning the studio, ordering ordering supplies, entering juried shows because we need to do that every now and then. Book work. I've been doing some Zoom videos. I do workshops, so I have to get ready for those. I do a lot of my, actually, I don't always do it in the studio. I do a lot of my stuff late at night. I'm not a person not to do anything. My friends are always telling me I'm working too hard. Well, my family's watching TV at night. I will very often be playing on my phone. Well, I don't play on my phone. My phone is an office. I don't play on it. That's when I will set up a new workshop at 11 o'clock at night on my phone. It's like a desk. So you just have to go out and do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the discipline comes. But you know what? That's any small business, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's a topic a lot of artists have, famously talked about over the generations, right? Of, inspiration's a beautiful thing, but you need to show up and get creating.
Absolutely.
And yes, it comes to you while you're working so often.
Absolutely. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it comes to you while you're working. There are days that it doesn't, but that's when you clean your studio, and usually that does it. I mean, it's also very helpful in this day and age to have things like Pinterest, because I mean, when I'm having my coffee in the morning and going through my emails and my Instagram and all that other fun stuff, I'm just going to bring a little bit of lemon yellow into this for this hot green that's going to go on top. Seeing somebody else's paintings can do that, right? Well, artists used to go to galleries to be inspired. Now we can just sit down in our phones and look at Pinterest and Instagram.
Well, we hope you'll come back to the galleries as soon as we're allowed to be back in there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, public galleries.
I know what you mean.
In the olden days.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because a work does not compare digitally. It does not. And one of the reasons that I have never done or ever intend to do any reproductions, also known as prints, but they are not prints, they're reproductions, it is because the flatness to them. The work and the glow of the colors and the layering and the surface tension is all what makes the work interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons I stopped painting in watercolor, was because it was behind the glass and there was a barrier there.
Yeah.
Preventing the viewer from, to me anyhow, connecting with the work. That was me. That's what I felt. I don't mind at a jury if I'm at when I used to do art fairs. I don't do them anymore because I'm too lazy. I never minded if little kids came up and touched my paintings. To me, you should be able to, not with sticky hands, of course, but they're tactile, right?
Mm-hmm.
All these shapes on them, and you want to see.
Yeah, people do always want to touch paintings.
So now I'm bringing in this kind of bright, limey green.
Yeah, it's really nice.
A bit of excitement to it. Now I had to pull a little bit of lemon yellow in to do that. I may not have had to do that if I had let this sit for a day, but in order to get that strong color, I do. I also, in my paintings, I don't know if you get this at the gallery, I like to put a discordant stroke in my painting. So I'll have marks up here that are just floating. And the brain will tell you that that's part of a tree and it belongs there. But sometimes I put them in spots just to irritate people. That's my role in life, is to irritate people. You know that, right? All my friends.
You're putting a little tension into your painting.
A little tension, yes. And I've had people actually yell at me before when I used to do the art fairs and tell me I can't do that because it's not right. And you know, my line is, it's my painting, I'll do what I want. But when you have something that irritates you, you know, an eyelash in your eye or a mosquito bite, what do? You scratch that sucker. So if there's something that is irritating about a painting, do you know what people do?
Linger?
They buy the painting. Because there's
Yeah, I
something,
think
there's something about human nature, and irritants. We love things that irritate us. We love puzzles. We love, you know, look at all the mystery books, right?
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah.
How big is your palette that you're working off of, Sheila?
24 by 30.
24 by 30.
24 by 30. If I were to do it again, I might not do it as deep. I tend not to use this space back here just because I got short arms.
Yeah.
But it works for me. It is glass and it's on plywood. The plywood underneath it is just unfinished plywood. I just stuck it down with caulking.
Okay.
And
do you clean it?
Sorry?
Do you clean it regularly?
I scrape it off at the end of the day, yes.
Okay.
I used to once a year actually clean it off. That's a fantasy. That's for when I get a minion. I haven't done it in a long time. And actually, if it's pure glass, you get a lot of reflection on it, right? So it's almost kind of nice when it's when it gets glass on it. There's a kind of painting. They use oil paint and they paint on glass reversed. I think it's called Hinter. It's a European, and the paint looks beautiful on glass.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
It does not come off. If I want to clean my palette, I have to spray it heavily with OMS, let it sit, and then scrape away at it for quite a while. So it sticks to everything.
Do you find not cleaning it fully affects your colors at all?
No, not anymore. Don't even notice it. No. Because when I scrape it off, it goes back to, you know, it's kind of a muted color on it. I tend to put my colors in the same spot on my palette. And my palette is not laid out like the color wheel, like they tell you in school. My palette is laid out. Years ago, I started putting the colors where they are. And as long as I don't move those colors, as I say, I tell my students, I don't care where on your palette you put your colors, as long as you know what that color does and where it is. And what happens after painting for years is that we tend to reach in the same spot. And if you move that color, then it really throws you off.
A little bit of muscle memory.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So do you have that rubber tool in your hand now?
Yes, I am. I've got some really nice clear darks on here now. So I'm just lifting some out. And these just look like, it actually pushes the paint. So it just gives the impression of some foreground stuff, you know, scrub, messy stuff. Starting to use my fingers more than I used to. We don't have manicures anymore.
No.
No.
They're not often.
No.
For the artist.
No, it's not worth it.
Can we get a close-up of the panel for a second?
Yep.
Can you wheel it to the screen?
I can. Yep. No, wrong one. Now I can also zoom in with my camera and see if you can see some of those subtle strokes. Where am I now? Easel. Configure video. Okay, watch it as I do this.
There we go. Beautiful.
So you can see some of those small subtle strokes. There's a lot of subtle strokes. Yeah.
There's such a distinct appearance to your brushwork.
Well, and every artist gets that. That's your voice, right?
Yeah, you know, the way that you handle your paints, the brushes that you choose, all that plays into it.
And that's something you're only going to get after painting for a long time. Sorry, I got to zoom out again now. tell me when it's out all the way. There, is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
So there we go. This software that I'm using, if anybody out there teaches and is interested, is called OBS. And of course, now I have to turn it a bit. OBS, it's a free software. And what it does is you can, I got it for, teachers use it. So it's, it takes multiple cameras and images, backgrounds, text. You can put dancing pigs on your video if you want to, and it turns them all into one camera.
Yeah.
So when I first started, one of the hindrances to teaching when you work on a panel like this was having people see you mixing your paint and then your image. And Zoom, you can have two cameras, but you have to kind of flip back and forth, right? And if you don't have somebody doing that for you,
yeah,
it's time consuming. So this software, you can add as many things on it as you want. I could have another video so that you could see me talking if I wanted to, but of course that all takes up more room on the screen.
Right. Yeah, no, this is a great solution.
The image and the palette and the painting,
yeah,
I think is enough.
Do you have the option to turn your mic up at all? Someone's asking.
I can. Yeah, can you? Is it better over here?
I can hear you better there.
Okay, all right, because it depends where I am and what mic I'm using.
Yes, true. Do you ever use gel medium?
No, I don't. It's just not me. I have it. I think I used it on that one with the orange. I think
yeah, that might be
a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I should. I would like to. I think if I got more experimental, I might. I just don't.
One day you might call to you and you'll pick it up.
Absolutely, yeah. Just because I don't. I mean, what I say today could be completely different tomorrow, right? So right now I don't. But that doesn't mean anything. I have it. I have a big tube of it right here. Just big giant tube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about cold wax? Have you ever played around with that?
I got a big tube of that too, yes. Yeah, I did a couple. One sold not in your gallery. And the other one did not yet. I don't know how to tell when they're dry. They always feel soapy to me.
Mm. Yeah, they have a very different texture.
Yeah, and I think it's a different texture, and I varnish my work after. So, and you can't varnish if you use cold wax. So I'm not sure. It's something I would need to get used to using if I did it more. There are some fantastic artists out there doing great work with cold wax.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But it's
Suzanne's asking
abstract, I think, then. I don't like that mark I just did, so don't do that. Sorry?
Suzanne is asking if you, how do you have the reference image while you paint? Is it a printout or a screen? And it's on a screen.
Yes.
Sheila's studio has, how many monitors do you have?
I have 3 monitors now. I really didn't need the third, but hey, I can watch Netflix on it. I have the screen that you're seeing now. If I move this, I don't know if I can move this over. Hang on. My issue that I had when I was teaching before was this camera that you're seeing in was on a tripod in order to get it just the right distance. So I now have a big boom coming out of my ceiling with this attached to it. But if I swing this over, you can see my other monitor.
Yep.
And then, well, it's a TV, and then below it's a monitor with my image on it. And then beside that, I have an old cell phone. Never get rid of your old cell phones. That I can shoot. There we go.
Perfect.
So yeah, it's great. Now I'm not tripping over my image anymore, or over my tripod, which is just wonderful. But Rhonda, who's out there in La La Land, said, now you need another camera so that we can see you do your brushwork up close. Yeah, Rhonda's gonna get it one of these days. I like techie stuff. I love techie stuff. It's interesting. I very often This dark strong mark that went off to the top here, I always mute my strong marks. I don't like things going off the top. It's not part of my composition. So I usually just smear those around. How are we doing for time? So I'm going to play around with some oil sticks now. And this is the point where I would stop for a day after I play with oil sticks. So we'll take a 10-minute break.
That sounds great. Do you want to step back in front of the camera there, Sheila? So yeah, that sounds great. We'll take a short 10-minute break. We have a few questions.
I'll do the oil sticks first.
Oh, you're going to do the oil sticks first. Okay, sounds great.
Make it quick.
Go ahead.
Suzanne Massey, who's out there, said she was going to have popcorn, so she probably needs to clean all the butter off her screen. She was going to throw popcorn at me if I screwed it.
Oh.
So first I'm going to do my oil sticks. Now these oil sticks are, oh, I'm going to use that color. I haven't used it in a long time. I use two different kinds. I use Kama or I use Shiva, which is, that sounds like a medium, but it's not. We're from Curry's. They don't have them. Curry's have nothing anymore. So these are Shiva. They're a fairly hard oil stick. So you'll see me rubbing here. They skin up overnight. So you have to take off the skin, and I usually just use a paper towel. I have yet to use my teeth, but that doesn't mean I won't. And I have tons of colors, and I have bits all over the place. I have drawers full of these things. I love them. They are so much fun. They just give you some tactile, some calligraphy. My paint's a little wet here because it's usually quite drier That's a word. So these ones are just kind of smearing around right now. They're not doing that much.
Suzanne says no popcorn for you, so no
popcorn. Yeah, my paint's kind of wet, so they're just kind of smeared around a little bit. So I probably won't do too much of them. But they just give a calligraphy look to them, and they add some more of that surface tension that we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice, but they're really not right now because my paint's too wet. I used a lot of paint on this painting first. There.
Mela just is asking what you're using for anyone who was missed that. These are oil sticks.
Yes, they're not oil pastels. They're very different than oil.
Very different, yeah. Oil sticks. Can you use oil sticks on top of acrylics?
Yes, you can.
I would imagine, yeah, usually you can use oil-based products on top of acrylic, but not vice versa.
Yeah, you could, yeah. The oil sticks work better when they have something to grab onto. So the stiff background panel is much more conducive to the oil sticks grabbing onto them. Like you saw, they just smeared around because I got too much paint on there. So they need something to grab, right? Because these are a hard stick. You can get softer sticks. They just smoosh like crazy.
Yeah.
But these are a harder sticks. So, but you've seen them in my work. Down here behind here, I have a lot of oil stick marks. Some of them I leave, some of them I don't. I cover them up. If I were doing this particular image, probably in like 48 by 48, it would have a lot more mark making in it, just because of the sheer size of it.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm going to take a picture of this. More lights in there. So I'm going to try and do that now. I'm hoping it's not too wet. Get my rubber glove. I'm using a right-handed rubber glove on my left hand because I keep forgetting to get a new rubber glove. Backwards.
So Janet's asking what we were looking for when we were looking at that black and white image, and that's kind of what Sheila is working on right now. So
yeah, patterns.
The black and white image allowed us to see, yes, yeah, areas of light and dark, and where we need to break that up. Yeah.
You know, and I mean, obviously, mine was not too bad because I know how to paint. But sometimes when you're working, especially if you're doing a soft painting, when you convert it to black and white, without realizing it, you could have done the whole painting in one value. So in color, it may read,
right,
but in black and white, it does not. Cover up that little spot.
Yeah, and our eye really does pick up on value more subconsciously maybe
Yes.
than we realize.
So the human eye goes to, I mean, obviously I paint organics, right? Some people paint buildings and street scenes and such. I paint organics, and they're no specific shape. So your eye will first go to humans. So if I were to put a little person walking down in here, that's where my eye would go. Sorry, I'm just getting a new brush here. So I'm switching to a clean brush and just picking up. Now I got a lot of white in here, but it's not white because my brush isn't dirty. My paint's dirty, and of course my paint's still wet up here. So every time I put down a mark down here, it's picking up some of that color underneath, which gives a real nice subtle temperature change. What was I saying? What were we talking about? I get sidetracked. So I'm just bringing in some light marks now. And again, you'll see I'm not painting. I'm just laying down strokes. And I'm turning my brush as I move it, because I get paint on one side and then I'll clean it. And this is like knowing how much paint to have on your brush comes with experience. For anybody that's painted in watercolor, when you want to lift paint off your paper,
right,
you have to wait till that sheen of water is off the paper, but it's still wet, right? So it's timing. And it's the same way here. You get to know by the feel of your brush, the feel of the surface, how much paint you need on, and the color you need. And that only comes with experience.
Right. Colette's brain is obviously less impacted by being in quarantine than yours and mine, Sheila. You were talking about organics versus buildings in your painting, and what kind of elements.
Well, yeah.
Thank you, Colette.
So if you're looking at anything outside, the eye will go to people first, right? We go to people. Then it will go to anything that's man-made. So a building, any geometric shape. So if I were to have a shape in here, unwittingly, that was a square or something, your eye would go there. That's why any spots that don't look right jump out. So the eye goes to geometric shapes first, then it will go to value, and then it will go to clarity. So, bright, intense colors. Now that was a new tube of white, and I just got a big glob of skin on it. I've had a few issues with Canva's white paint. So I may be switching to Gamblin white paint. Anyhow, I should contact them. But they've had a few chances.
I love those beautiful light marks that you're adding in.
Yes,
this gives such a feel of the sun coming
my
through.
Yellow. I just put a glob of thick white. I'm just straight paint now. This is why I don't need any medium. Because I just put enough OMS in it to move the paint. But the paint has enough in it. If this were completely dry, so if something happens and I can't get back to a painting immediately, then I usually just use straight paint on top. I don't even use OMS, just straight paint, because obviously pretty thick. Yeah, that's a new tube of Camo white. I don't like it. I'm complaining. What I don't like about it is it's got thick stuff in it. It's almost like it was half dry when they were milling it. So I'm just trying to add light passages to this because there's light coming out over here. Try not to. One of my goals in painting is to make my paintings less busy. I know you're all laughing now. Anybody that knows my work now is laughing at me. Less busy. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, it probably won't happen. But larger passages.
Can have the goal.
I know. You have to have a goal.
Absolutely.
If we ever painted a perfect painting, we'd never have to paint again, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's always that. What are you trying to do next?
Absolutely.
Bit of motivation.
What are you trying to do? What are you trying to say? I always used to think that if I
won $1 million.
There was a question back when you had the oil. Sorry.
So I was just going to say that if I always had the feeling that if I ever won $1 million, I could just buy paintings and I wouldn't need to paint anymore. But my husband tells me I get nasty if I'm not in the studio for a few days. So yes.
I think you'd find yourself in the studio.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, just to hide, especially during a pandemic. This is my space. Nobody comes out here. So yes, you were asking something about oil sticks.
There was a question while you were using the oil sticks of how you pick what color you want to use for those marks.
Well, I buy the ones I like. Sorry, yeah.
Do you find, are they mostly like light colors, or what do you do?
They're all colors. A lot of them are the paint colors I use. I do have a couple that are very bright that I'll use to scribble on. One of them is cadmium orange light, which is this color. Whoops, sorry, I don't know if you can see it. It makes it really, I would never paint with that.
Oh, beautiful. That's great.
And yeah. Is I think I chucked it on the floor, is a fluorescent pink color. Oh, there it is. A fluorescent pink color, which makes some really neat marks. And because they're small, you know, the marks are fairly small. It adds some interest, but it's not overpowering.
Right. You can find you'll be a little more adventurous with those colors if you want to.
That big square one that you have has a lot of those colors in them. Yeah, this tube of paint's really goopy.
There were quite a few questions about varnishing, Sheila.
Okay. Yes. So the old school rule was let your painting dry for a year before you varnish it. Nobody does that anymore. Come on. I use a spray varnish. Some people like to brush it on, but I paint large, so I spray it on. I take it outside, even in the winter time. Take it outside, and I use Kamar. It's a Krylon product. It's a retouch varnish, so you can paint over it if you have to. I don't, but it has a nice soft sheen. Anything that you can put on as soon as the painting is dry, without waiting for that year, is a retouch varnish. It's not a final varnish. But really, I mean, in this day and age, the pigments are so much better than they used to be, right? It's not like the days of Turner, where the pigments were natural things that would change. The alizarin crimson has been replaced with a more permanent version. So, I mean, the paints are so good now that, you know, thinking that your paints are going to degrade if they have daylight is not really so much a concern anymore. Varnish will protect your painting if it's hung over a real fireplace, or there's smoke damage, or you know, somebody throws a coffee at it, or popcorn. It will protect it. I do know somebody whose work was in a gallery, was in a fire, and the insurance restored them, and she said she was told that yes, the ones that were varnished were much easier to restore than the ones that were not. So it does make them
interesting.
Clean. Yeah. Now, if you work in acrylic, you need to have an isolation coat between the varnish and your painting, so that you can.
What coat? Sorry.
An isolation coat, and usually, now I'm not an expert on. Somebody there probably is. But it's a coat of medium gloss or matte medium, or a mixture of the two, and you just paint that on, and what that does is that binds to the paint so that the final varnish coat will not. So that if you have to remove that coat, you're not damaging the paint that's underneath. Same thing, and again, you should have that information available to whoever buys your paintings. Because if it ever does need to be cleaned, they need to know what varnish you use, because varnishes are all removed with different things. I think it's denatured alcohol that takes off Kamar. Some can. But good to know. But yeah, no, I can't keep my paintings around until they're dry. I don't have a big enough studio for that. So now I'm bringing some of these little lights down into here. So I've just got paint on my brush. I'm bringing a little bit of that soft yellow into here. Nothing but paint on my brush. And I'm being really careful now. It's a little slimy in spots, but I'm being really careful. Slimy because my white is thick. Yuck. Bitch, 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 bitch. Being careful to clean my brush now. Spin it over again. I mean, I have a lot of experience with this paint, so I can tell when my brush is getting dirty. I don't necessarily want dead clean all the time, but now it's pretty dirty. There's a little bit of dirt on there, so I'm wiping my brush now. Because if you don't, and you just keep touching your brush down, what happens is your entire surface just ends up one color, because all you're doing is mixing the color that's on your surface. You're not adding any value, you're just mixing it. So I have kids next door now. Can you hear them?
Yes.
My neighbors are both EMS people, and they have 5 kids.
Finish your water.
Which are adult kids. You think they'd realize being EMS people, what causes you to have 5 kids? But they're cute. They like to come over and help me load my van.
No more now, okay? No more now. Okay. No.
So now I'm going to bring in, put it some more white. I have already used, now when I squish out my white, I have already used about 8 inches of white paint. If you can imagine squishing out a worm of paint. Does everybody hear me okay?
Believe so.
Okay. When you have 3 cameras and they're all the same make, you really don't know which camera it is that's working as a microphone, because I can't rename them. They all have the same, they're all the same brand. It's too thick. So I'm just dipping into my OMS enough now to get this paint moving, because it's, as I said, this particular tube of paint is not great. So I'm bringing some light blue down in here. And maybe a little bit of blue gray, because the light down at the bottom is cooler. If you're looking at the image, at least I see it as cooler. Again, this is learning how to see color, right? There's kind of a streak of light coming down through there. I think one of the kids just clobbered another one. This could get interesting.
Are you using your reference image very much at this point, Sheila?
Yes and no. I am looking at it because I'm looking at the light patterns. And part of that is it's just habit, right? I look over and keeps your neck from getting stiff.
Gather a little bit of information.
Yeah, just a little bit of information. Now, if I was working on a really large painting that gets much more abstract, then I would probably drop it much more. So, but it would have a lot more marks in it if it was a bigger painting. So now I'm looking at all those little subtle marks that I put down. There's a lot of lines and stuff going on in here. So this is where I can do negative painting and go in between. Every mark that I put down gave me the ability to pick and choose what I wanted to keep. So I'm doing some negative painting in between some of those lines. This is the part that I like. This is the busy part. This is the part that's
yes, but you've got some nice kind of negative space in the sky and things as well. Yeah. And then there's, what draws you in terms of subject matter is those dense forests and underbrush,
yes. Yeah.
Which has so much detail. Yeah.
And I mean, every artist has a part when they're painting where their brain just shuts down. And mine is when I get into all these tiny little marks. like that big one that you have, Lost in Translation.
Yes.
One of my favorite paintings. I think if I had a spot to hang that, it would be in my house. It's too big.
We have a lot of beautiful work by Sheila in, not just as part of the current exhibition in the moment, but also in our additional inventory. If you visit westlandgallery.ca, you can find everything we have by Sheila on her artist page on our website.
And the other ladies in the show do fabulous work.
It's a beautiful exhibition that we have on right now because there's so much variety. We have Jane Wright, a glass artist.
Yeah, her work.
Rain Roy, a textile artist. Yeah. And Nancy Calder, who's a realism oil painter.
So now I'm assessing my darks. So I have this dark tree that comes up here, but it just kind of stops here, and it can't do that because that would defy physics. I don't pay any attention to rules, but there are things that are disconcerting because they defy physics. And you can defy Mother Nature, but you can't defy Mother Earth. So I'm just putting in a couple marks, and that's all you need to tell the eye that that painting keeps growing up. Soften some of that. Finger painting. Finger paints are fun. Any other questions?
There were a couple standalone questions from earlier. Do you have to sand your gesso after you apply it?
Yes. I don't sand between coats, but you have to do your final coat, especially with the clear gesso because it's very toothy. It's like sandpaper when it's done. It'll take the skin off your fingers and the hairs off your brush. So I'm just trying to bring a little bit of light down into this dense part. That's when I was looking at my grayscale image. And this is where you can turn negative shapes into positive shapes. So these lights down here are negative shapes, and now I'm going to make them into positive shapes, which means I just painted a leaf, if you want to call that a leaf, yep. In the light color. So, and that's what becomes interesting to the eye is, you know, when things move around and change.
Yeah, lots of play and movement.
Yeah.
Someone's asking, do you use your spray varnish outside? Yes, always. And how do you do that in the winter? And I think the answer is just that you tough it out. Is that right, Sheila?
Yeah, well, I'm very careful. I mean, my spray stays inside. The painting's inside. The easel's inside. I only do it on a sunny day when there's no wind. And I like to do it like over 5 degrees or around 0. So sometimes it's waiting it out. And everything is done very quickly. So I get the thing out and it's sprayed within 5 minutes and then come back in. So there's really no time for the panel to cool down,
right.
To actually get cold. And when I bring it back in the studio, I just open up, shut the heat down so it don't blow us all sky high, and leave the building for the day because it does stink.
Yeah.
So I do that at the end of the day and just open everything up and then come back in about 8 o'clock at night and, you know, turn the heat back up and close the doors. So now I'm stepping back and assessing where I'm at. You know, busy wise, I don't want this whole thing just to end up polka dotty. It's got to have some context to it. And I don't want it overworked.
Someone is asking, how long do you leave the paintings before you varnish? So the varnish Sheila's using is like a workable varnish, like you were saying. And so the painting needs to be dry, but it doesn't need to
Yeah,
you know,
it's
here for
dry to the touch.
Yeah.
And so if there's any nubbies on it, they're pretty hard, right? And the reason for that is if I have varnished it, my brain tells me it's dry. And if there's a nubby on it that is just skinned over, when I go to pack it for shipping, that can smear. So I like to make sure it's all very dry. This is the varnish I use.
Yeah.
There we go. Kamar Varnish Krylon. And this handy dandy little sprayer hand is just from a paint store. And it saves your finger. And it makes, there is a technique to spray varnishing. There's a you have to, it's the same technique as spray painting. You don't just do this. You have to hold it vertical like that. So no arcing. And you have to always test it off the surface before it hits the surface, just in case there's something wrong with the can or something.
Right.
So there is technique to it. You know, sometimes there's people that talk about hot spots where you can see a bloom, and that's just technique. That has nothing to do with the varnish. That's your technique of spraying. So I'm just trying to cool down some of these little areas with some of this mauve, because there is kind of it's a sunny yellow mauvey feeling to this painting. I don't like that spot. I just put one spot inside another spot. There we go. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm capturing the feeling that I wanted to when I chose this subject. And one of the things that people will often notice with my paintings is that I don't necessarily have a focal point in my work. Sometimes there's
Someone's wondering if a bloom comes from moisture under the varnish or spray. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, yeah, it can. So if you're painting outside in the wintertime, you can get condensation, right? No, you can get I mean, when I say a bloom, yes, there's a bloom from condensation, but there's also bloom just from hitting it with too much varnish, right?
Like a heavy
Spot, yeah. There was an artist on Instagram that sprayed in his garage one day, and the whole thing fogged over. And I don't think he could ever repair it. He had to ditch the painting, which is a shame because he was a high realism painter. So it was months of work. Yeah, he wasn't very happy.
That's terrible.
And he's not really sure what happened because it was in his garage. So unless the can had been in the garage, I mean, if the can gets cold, right? So my varnish stays in here, and I literally hang the painting, do this really quickly, and it's back in within 2 minutes.
Okay. Yeah.
So it has to say, I don't have any choice. Behind my other monitor, where my murder of birds is, I have a murder of birds. See here, I'll show you. See the birds? See the big black things in the corner behind the easel?
Oh yeah, up in the top, yeah, above the hat.
That's my murder. I love ravens, so I have a whole bunch of raven puppets and stuffed animals, and my husband hung a big piece of driftwood up there, so I have a murder of birds hanging around up there, and it's attached to a exhaust fan. When I built my studio, because I was stealing my husband's garage, I gave him the opportunity to have input. When you give men an opportunity to have input, you know. So I ended up with a big, huge exhaust fan from Princess Auto, and discovered the first time I used it that it wasn't going to work because there's too much overspray, right? You actually need a spray booth if you're going to do it. If I was ever going to renovate my studio, I would make sure I had a spray booth inside my space, but I don't. So there we go. The first time I used it, I put it on just for fun to see what would happen. And I hadn't opened a window at the other end, and I have rolled flooring, like vinyl flooring on my floor.
Yeah.
And because I didn't open another window, it created, a suction, and it's a really powerful fan. So my whole floor lifted about 3 feet. It was like being in a bouncy castle. So I'm literally jumping around in my studio to get over to my door. And as soon as I opened the window, everything settled down again. But that's how powerful that exhaust fan is.
Wow.
So I'm stopping looking at my painting now. I think all it needs now is a little bit more line work. So
You were mentioning that you don't always have like a focal point or a central point in your
No.
paintings.
yeah,
Can you expand on that a little bit?
no, I don't. Because I'm painting almost abstract organic shapes. I mean, I could put a focal point in, but it's not like a house, you know, where you have light on a roof and there's your focal point. It could go anywhere. I guess if you were looking at this, you could say that, but then there's this spot over here, and then there's another spot over here. So I have more pattern and abstract quality than an actual focal point.
Right.
Some of my paintings do, some of them don't. Now, Lori was talking about a turquoise spot in the middle of my painting before there. When everybody was off having a break, she was messaging me about things that are wrong with my painting. So
Good to have some, friends with some critical feedback.
one friend that if she didn't like what I was doing, she would just come over, grab my brush, make a mark, and run away. That's what good friends are for, right? Keep it real. Yeah, so that part of that was the angle that was at, and she was right. There was a very blue mark right here, so I've just danced that around a little bit to create some light. Sorry, it's back in the right spot. Are we good there?
Sorry, could you wheel it back flat on? Just leave it there for one more second.
Yeah.
People can, or move it to straight on. Yeah, just give it a second there for people. For folks.
So yeah, she was talking about this mark here. Was intent, and part of that was the angle she was at, right?
Lori's saying maybe she was talking about a different spot. I don't know.
No, she said blue spot. She's there. She's listening.
Yes.
She's probably messaging me.
People are chiming in.
So one of the issues with painting, one of the issues with painting is when you're staring at a painting all day, you don't necessarily see stuff like that. It's always good to come back the next day with a fresh eye before you think a painting is finished.
Absolutely.
Come in and look at it because we've all done paintings that have faces in them.
Yeah. I think you can move it back if you want to.
Thank you. So this is my little easel that I'm using, and this easel in its heyday used to belong to Duncan McPherson, who used to do the political cartoons for the Globe and Mail. He's the one that did the big chin. Who's the guy with the big chin? Prime Minister? Joe Clark? No, not Joe Clark. The other one. Anyhow, he did all the political cartoons. So it's been repaired many times.
Someone says Mulroney.
Yeah, Mulroney. Yeah. So it's been repaired many times, but it's got some really good vibes. So it will always stay in my studio.
The oil sticks that you were using before, are they Kama still?
Yes, Kama
Someone
and
mentioned that
Sheila.
as your brand.
There was a brand from Curry's called Shiva that I like, but they're not carrying them much anymore. And the two colors that I really liked, when they stopped carrying them, I did the thing that I always do. I went to their website and bought them all. So, I have like drawers and drawers.
Stocked up.
Yeah. I don't buy things like, and of course, when I used to go teach, right, I would take them with me. And let students try them, when I was out live. So, because not everybody buys them. But they're a lot of fun. They are a lot of fun. Now, this area down here is a little dark. So I'm going to play around with that a little bit. Now I'm getting down to the fine finagling. That's a technical word, finagling.
Do you have a title in mind for this piece yet?
Oh, not yet. I usually do, eh?
What's your process for titling pieces?
They usually come to me just as I'm painting. I have on my phone, I have a document that's probably got 500 titles on it. When when things just pop into my head, I make a note.
Yep.
But it's funny, I very rarely use them because usually a painting titles itself. I don't know. Not yet.
You use like lots of sayings, I guess, and short phrases.
Yeah, I like idioms. I like things that make people giggle.
Mhm.
You know, you've got one called Shindig.
Yes,
Because it looks like a party, right?
it does.
And I think I was into listening to sea shanties at that point. Sea shanties are very hot right now. I'm not sure I should have done that, but I did. So if you do something you're not sure you should have done. So I emphasize this dark branch a bit more, and it happens to be right in the middle. So if you do something you're not sure about, you can't really take it out, because if you do, you're going to have a smeary mark and it's just going to look stupid, and everybody's going to know you screwed up, and they're going to laugh at you and throw popcorn at your screen. So all I do is put that same mark somewhere else. And what that does is just says, I meant to do that. That was not a mistake. That was just pure talent. Make it till you fake it, right?
You're a very confident painter. You move. I don't see much hesitation in those brush strokes.
Yeah, I've been painting a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always never been afraid. Well, I'm not much of a drawer, but I've never been afraid of a blank surface. There's a lot of people that are very intimidated by making that first mark, and I never have.
Someone asked a while back what the different pieces of software you're using today are. You have a couple things on the go.
Just the Windows Picture Viewer for my image. And I'm using OBS, which is combining these three things, three cameras, right? So it's combining this camera and the image and this camera. So that's OBS. I was recording on that as well because it just recorded that screen, which was really nice. Zoom is unfortunately recording everything we see. But I think that's what was causing the lag in the recording. So I turned it off. So I won't have a perfect recording. But that's okay. You learn, right? It's a live event. So I use that, and I am using for closed captioning. If anybody's using it, I'd be interested in finding out if it's working for them. Okay. It's a website called Web Captioner, and it provides free closed captions for Zoom, because Zoom doesn't provide free closed captions. You have to pay for them, and they're very expensive. So Google Meet does provide free captions. And I'm very aware of captioning because I have a daughter with hearing issues. She's got hearing aids, and I have a friend who's got cochlear implants. She's deaf, so I'm aware of those things.
Yeah, it's important.
It's important, yeah. And I like them myself. I have them on everything because I'm very often watching videos in the evening when I'm in the living room with my family. Oops, did I mean to do that? Maybe not. So if anybody's missing what I just did, I'm just bringing some, it's not really paint on my brush, but I'm just dragging some lighter marks through here, and that just makes some, as opposed to painting, I'm just dragging the paint around now. That makes these very subtle little marks that look like twigs and stuff, forest stuff. I think it's called detritus. Somebody told me once. I like forest stuff. I don't like pretentious words.
Julie mentions that she's using the captioning as an aid right now, and it's working pretty well. The occasional weird thing, which is true with any auto caption program, there's going to be the odd misspoken word. But
well, we tried it with our art association because we have the one girl who's deaf, and of course, when we found out it worked, the first thing we tried was swear words to see if it would do them. And it bleeps out your swear words. So we had to do every swear word to see which ones it would bleep out and not bleep out. 60 going on 12.
That's funny. Are you thinking consciously about putting rhythm into your painting, or is it just coming organically to you?
It comes organically. Yeah, I don't really think. I'm going to add some more highlights in this spot right here. I like these little negative marks. I love negative marks. That's my thing, right? all these little tiny explosions of light and dark, which is why I like twiggy stuff.
Yeah, it really does convey the sky coming through the trees.
Yeah.
It's very effective.
So, I mean, there's a zillion marks in here. I shouldn't say zillion. I mean, you just see one light mark in here, but there's a whole pile of different values in here. So, I mean, even though it's light coming through, it's dancing leaves and then the sunlight hitting it and then a little bit of green, a little bit of blue. But I also have to be careful not to overdo it, because if you overdo it, then the whole thing is just, not working right. So I'm paying attention to where I'm putting some of these little marks now. This is the boring part when you put Netflix on.
I think it's fascinating watching it. Kind of mesmerizing.
When I first started, when I was painting the wetland series before, we were at a place called Bridgewater that our group used to go to, which is over near Tweed, a little town called Actinolite. It was quite a famous art retreat owned by Mary Schneider back in the 60s. And we were there, and my girlfriend said, well, when we go home, let's go home this way and take some photos, because we were there in the autumn. Absolutely gorgeous weather. So we took this back road home, home for her. I had to backtrack, but it was absolutely gorgeous. And we threw our bags on our gas pedals, opened the door, and rode the running board while taking photos of the car, of the woods out the car.
Oh my gosh.
All the locals are going, oh geez, the artists are back. Because I guess we're not the only ones to have done that.
That's funny.
Yeah.
The lengths to which you'll go for a good
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
inspiration photo.
Run around and go, ooh, when things excite us. So I'm gonna try and leave this area a little bit softer. I don't know. Sorry, I just do that. I always adjust things when I'm painting. Now I need to bring that up a little bit. What do I want to do? I'm going to bring a little bit. Now I haven't used too much transparent red oxide, but I'm going to bring some of that in now with the transparent orange. So I'm making a warm bricky red color, but in transparent colors. So transparent red oxide is the same as burnt sienna, only it's transparent. So it's nicer. Once you use it, you never go back to burnt sienna. I don't know anybody that has ever gone back to burnt sienna after using transparent red oxide. And transparent yellow oxide is the same as yellow ochre and raw sienna. Only transparent. That's a little distracting. So just trying to break up that dark area a little bit there.
Yep. Yeah, this is kind of similar to what you're talking about with, I forget the name of the technique, but when working in watercolor and bringing some warms and cools.
Yeah.
What was it called?
Purging.
Purging?
Purging, yeah.
Purging.
So you're just kind of throwing in, all you do, well, of course, in watercolor, your paper's wet, right? So you put down that pure thing and it would slowly creep, right? Because it's watercolor, your paper's wet. So it would make that, it would blossom and grow on your page. So
Andrea was just asking for a repeat on what we just said about transparent comparisons. So yellow ochre and burnt sienna are very commonly used recommended paints for a painter's palette, right?
Yes.
And what you're saying, Sheila, is the transparent red oxide.
Yellow oxide.
Yellow oxide?
Yeah,
yellow is very comparable.
The yellow ochres. Yellow, it's got yellow in it.
Yep.
And the red oxide is similar to burnt sienna. So they're earth tones.
Right.
Right?
So yeah.
Transparent.
Yeah. And so Sheila was saying you can utilize those two transparent colors in lieu of those commonly used more opaque pigments.
Once you try the transparents, you'll never go back.
Right.
Because they're great. I mean, if you're doing traditional painting and you're going to do some glazing, because they're transparent, right? They'll warm up an area nicely. So all I'm doing is bringing a little bit of that blue up here, changing the temperature and the value of this one tree, because he's there, but I don't want him, he's there, but he's not there. This other tree, he's the, it's not the extra, but he's, you know, you can see his face. He's getting paid more, but he's, every painting needs a main character and then a supporting actor, and then all the other bits that you need, right?
Mhm.
So if this painting just had this tree and this tree and this tree, it'd be pretty boring. You got all these little sticks and texture, but that's me, right?
Yeah.
That's what I paint.
Yeah, that's what you excel in
That's what
and
I
what you enjoy doing as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, everybody has to find their own thing. Whoops.
Yeah.
Holy crap. That was a big blob of paint.
Do you ever do like a formal glazing
No.
process? No.
I have the patience of a knit, the attention span of a knit. Anything that I would have to let it dry, no. No. I can't even watch TV anymore without playing on my phone. I get my money's worth out of Netflix now because I'm watching the same movie 5 times in order to actually see the movie.
Yeah, it's difficult to
Yeah,
keep our attention on
I
something
have a
these
whole
days.
pile of good books to read, art books, and you know, even sitting down, I'd have to lose the internet for a month before my brain would settle down enough to read. So I'm just putting in some fine lines here and there,
Mhm.
just to add some interest. All these little things that would be hidden, and sometimes it's just a matter of moving paint. There's nothing on my brush, but because it's oil paint and it's still wet. Now, I just made 3 perpendicular marks there, which was bad. No, don't do that. Okay, get rid of that. 3 perpendicular marks on your canvas look like a cat scratch. So that mark, I'm going to make small. So I just lifted that out. So it looks like it's coming behind that tree. So I want layers, right? I want the stuff that when you're walking into it, it's poking your eyes out, and then you have to move the next layer of trees and the next layer of trees. And usually my titles come from, if I was walking with somebody and we were out hiking and we came upon this scene, what would we say to each other about it? And
What do you want people to be saying?
what's the conversation that's going on if you were looking at this scene? So there's an artist I like called Drew Klassen. I love his work. And he once had a painting that he did that was very abstract, and it was obviously done when he was on holidays of a beach at a resort somewhere, right? It was palm trees and lights from the resort and stuff. And it was called, "Let's Go Play a Game of Bridge After Dinner." Because you could tell that he was sitting there with his wife, trying to decide what they were going to do after dinner. It was late afternoon. It's time to set up. And I just found that that's so interesting. It's a personal conversation.
Mhm.
And
I think it brings you into the scene. It's not just an
right.
independent scene, it's an experience that you're
Yes,
having.
so that's what I think about when I'm titling is what conversation would I be having with somebody if we were standing here together looking at this?
Right. On the topic of those art books sitting on your coffee table waiting to be read, are there any that you recommend?
Oh, well, that I've read. They say Carlson's book of landscape painting is the Bible.
Yeah.
I haven't read it. He's a very old-fashioned writer. Someday I'm going to read it. It's a boring book. He writes almost like a Victorian, but they said that if you can get through it, it's a Bible for. But there's a few good ones. Oh boy. There's one that's called Artwork. I can't remember who wrote it. And it's good. Art and Fear is very good.
Art in Fear?
Art and Fear. Sorry, I'm looking at my book rack right here. Artwork is by, I can't remember. And it's about breaking through. Artwork is about being a professional artist. And it was a very famous artist that wrote it. I think he was one of the painters 11. I could be wrong. And I don't know. I mean, I haven't read a book in so long. I have one, Brian Rutenberg is worth following. He's got videos on YouTube.
Who was that?
Brian Rutenberg. His work is to die for. So this little pine tree, believe it or not, it's a pine tree, has got dead stuff caught in it, right? That's what all these little bits of orange are. So they're giving the impression of leaves. I'm at the point now where I am 98% done. So I'm being careful now when I step back before I make another mark. I'm stepping back and I'm just making one mark at a time.
Suggested title, Big Load of Tangle.
Big load of tangle?
Yeah. There is definitely like lots of, like we've said, on underbrush, tangled branches,
Yes.
in a lot of your work, Sheila.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, chaos. Actually, when she said tangle, the word tango came to mind. Tango, you know, like the dance. Huh, I don't know. It'll come to me. It's very dappily too.
Mm-hmm.
But I've used that one before. So this soft bluesy turquoise that I'm putting in just around this orange really sets off the orange. They look really nice together. It's a very pretty color. So I'm just kind of giving the impression of stuff in front of those leaves. Pretty subtle. Now I've got a very strong light mark right here. His picture book costs, who's that, Brian Rutenberg? Just order it. I have them all. I have a strong mark right down here. It's only money. I have a strong mark down here and I haven't decided yet if I'm going to keep it. This is where I don't ask anybody's opinion. My husband knows enough not to give me his opinion. But if I ask an opinion and I say to somebody, I have a strong mark down there, should I keep it? If I'm bringing it up, if I'm asking the question, should I keep it? It means I have an issue with that spot. Otherwise, it wouldn't bother me. And because it's a very light spot against a dark spot, now if it was somewhere else, it wouldn't matter, but it's right down in that lower hand corner, right? So just kill it, gone. But now that that's gone, I got a strong line here. There, now we go. Now we need another mark there. So when I'm adjusting something, if I'm fixing something, I don't just make that mark there. I make a few marks around so that I don't want it to look like I patched, right?
Right.
So I always adjust things with that particular color in that area or another area.
Yeah, you bring it in elsewhere.
Bring it in elsewhere so it looks like it belongs. Still kind of dark down here, but I don't want to make it too busy. Is everybody getting bored? This is where I always ask, is people getting bored? But as exciting as watching.
Oh, we have 85 people with us.
What did we start off with?
No, about 90 was the highest, I think.
Oh, that's not bad then. Well, it is a Saturday and it's the first nice day we've had in a long time, right? It's actually not bad out there. Okay, so now the thing about trees is that trees have branches on the outside, but they also have branches coming at you. So now I'm just pushing paint around. I'm not even really using any paint on my brush, but I'm doing a little bit of foreshortening with branches coming off. Which again adds a little bit more texture. That's probably too much. Okay, now I just noticed I have a very strong arc here from two different shapes. Does anybody notice that? You probably can't see it.
I think I can kind of see it. Yeah.
See that? That's from
Yep.
3 different marks. So I don't like that. That's wrong. So I'm just going to kill one of those marks down. There. There, gone.
At this point, you're kind of like editing. You're looking, stepping back.
Yeah, and that shape just appeared when I put one more of those little branches on.
Yeah.
So yeah, now I'm editing. I'm going to pull out my phone and take another black and white. Get my rubber glove off. And I take a black and white while I'm right here. That's my new noise apparently. Take a black and white of the image, go into square. And when I take a picture of a square painting, I try to make it square. Block out as much as I can. That will interfere with how the painting looks on camera. Oops, there we go. So I'm just looking through my camera. I know you guys can't see me, but I'm looking at it through my camera to seeing.
Set on black and white.
Yeah. Well, grayscale, not black and white.
Grayscale, yes.
Seeing if there's anything that bothers me. And yes, there is. Okay, so right here, I have 2 dark branches stopping at the same spot. So I'm just going to bring this guy up a little bit. Because I didn't want him. They were both stopping at the same spot. I'm going to mute that a little bit. Now I'm going to go back and do it again, see if I fixed it. I'm just going to mute this guy down a bit. Not like that. It's one of my favorite lines when I'm painting. Not like that. Now I lost it completely and it looks like I just tried to rub it out. So we're going to put it back. So this is where you knock it back and then bring it up again.
I think this is interesting, seeing the process, right? And it always goes around a bit.
Now, one thing I just noticed in my black and white that I have to try and fix is that both these big trees are exactly the same distance from the edge of the surface. I don't know if you can see that now. You see them? Both the same distance from the edge. So it looks like I have train tracks going up the middle of my panel. So can I fix that? Probably. I keep telling other people you can fix things. As an artist, you should be able to go back in at any point and repair a painting if you need to. So you should be able to look at your painting and say, I know what colors I used. So I'm just bringing some darks up in here because I wanted to kill that. I want to take the attention away from this dark tree. So I'm going to put another one in beside it. I got a lot of paint on my brush and it's pretty oily right now. So I'm taking the emphasis away from this tree by putting more stuff beside it. As opposed to trying to get rid of that tree, I'm just going to make it darker and busier beside it. And then that spot down there, down here, move it down. Trees have to be grounded. By grounding, I mean you can't have a tree stop. You have to carry it down.
That makes sense.
Just a little bit of color. Otherwise, it looks like it's floating. And again, that's physics. Anything that's not physically possible is disruptive to the eye. So now I'm going to check that again. And I think it's actually pretty good. Still have that blue spot in the middle. Lori, thank you.
I don't think that's the same spot Lori's talking about.
I see it now though. And it's part of that is because I used that turquoise and it's quite a bright chroma. So the eye is going there. So, and it's right in the middle and I just made it worse. So even though I'm trying to dance it across the screen, oh my God, I've gone too techie. My painting is a screen. I've gone trying to fix it by brightening up beside it, but it's still there. So I'm just going to have to make that go away. There, gone away. But now that I've done that, I want to bring this up a little bit more over here. I think I just changed my focal point. There we go.
People are loving it.
Yeah, it's not horrible. It's always nice when paintings aren't horrible.
There are a few comments of people seeing things in the shapes. I'm not mentioning them.
Do we have a penis?
Nothing like that. But yeah, there's that happens often, especially when you have like a semi-abstract composition, right?
Yes.
There's always things to see.
Years ago, when I did one of my first abstracts, it was an acrylic, and it was a very experimental piece, and it didn't get into a jury show, and I really thought it would because it was a good painting. And I contacted them and I said, why didn't it get in? I'm surprised they didn't just tell me to piss off. But they said, actually, it would have gotten in, it would have won a prize, except for the face in it. And I said, what face? And I looked at it, oh, jeez. As soon as you see it, you can't not see it, right? The bell's been rung.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was like, oh my God, as soon as somebody points something out to you, it's there. Nothing you can do about it, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm just overworking it. Okay, stop. Okay, stop. More, stop, stop, stop. I do this, common, stop, okay. All right. So now when I sign my name, now sometimes it's just tricky when I do it because the painting's half dry. Because when I paint really, really thin, you'd be surprised how much they set up overnight. But I use one of these rubber doohickeys, and I use a particular shape of one. And they're getting duller and duller. I have to keep buying more because the corners go. And I actually carve my name in. I know you can't see it.
Yes, Sheila like carves back through the thick paint.
Through the thick paint, yep.
Yeah.
And so it's there. And then I take my fingerprint. And I've been told my finger will have to be cut off someday and frozen. And I just put my thumbprint in there somewhere. Very subtle. It's just something I do. Yeah. I don't know why. Got my thumbprint in there, but you can't see my name. But it's actually a pretty big signature. I mean, the D is 6 inches tall, right? I like to sign by my last name. I don't sign by my first name. Just my last name. Part of that is because there's still a lot of sexism with female artists, and part of it is because I would screw up the spelling. So
it looks great.
It's not there. I don't want somebody to buy my painting because it has my signature on it. I don't care how famous I get. That's not how I want you. Why I want you to buy my painting. I want you to buy my painting because you want to hang it on your wall.
Mm-hmm. You
want to look at it every day. I'm just carrying that tree down a little bit. I gotta fix it. Okay. So my signature is there, but it doesn't interfere with the painting.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone has a kind of a different solution, but I think that's a really successful one, the way that
lots. I think they all got it from me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it really works. A lot of men, this is where we get to pick on men. We only had 4 men registered for this, by the way. Men tend to write especially American men tend to write their names in big red letters, and they put every credential behind their name that they've ever earned.
Yeah.
And that's not something, it's on the back of the painting, but it's not.
Yes, you put your qualifications.
Not on the front. That's not the reason to buy the painting. Okay, so I will take another image of this, and I think it's done. If I do any more, I'm going to screw it up. Yeah,
take a picture and then roll it back on over to the camera, maybe.
I'll it so you can take a look. Little things, and I'll take some close-ups so you can see some of the brushwork. I always post my close-ups on my Instagram because it makes a big difference, right? You can't see the subtle marks and the thickness of the paint. So I'm going to find some spots if I have any. Every painting is different. where the paint underneath is quite thin. I don't have a whole lot on this one. But some of them, the original,
Right, the underpainting really comes
yeah,
through.
yeah, where it's drippy is under there. Okay.
There's a question here. I don't really know what it's saying. I've seen you spray your paintings when you have time to let them dry before finishing. Obviously, you can't today. Do you pretty much always spray to get a different texture? You know what that's referencing?
Oh, yeah. So they're talking about this thing. This is a spray bottle full of OMS.
Oh,
So if I've started a painting and I'm finding it too hard or too realistic or just overworked looking, I'll spray it with, or not everywhere, just some spots with a fine mist of OMS.
okay.
I leave the room because it's
Yeah.
here. And it's like watercolor. I don't know what I'm going to come back to the next morning.
Right.
It might all be on the floor. But it adds some of that spontaneity. I'm just going
It does.
Yeah, I'm just going to move some of this.
OMS stands for question mark. I
Odorless
wasn't
mineral spirits.
sorry, what was it?
Odorless mineral spirits.
Odorless mineral spirits. Okay, interesting. I wasn't sure what that was either. I figured it was mineral spirits, but odorless.
Mineral spirits. Yeah. Okay. So I am just, tell me when this is in a good position.
Can you close the blinds maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know.
They are closed.
Oh, they are closed. Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I can adjust the light on this. That's why I'm just trying to get it centered.
There are a couple comments that, watching you paint is like a beautiful dance, or it's amazing that you've accomplished this in just a few hours. But you've been painting for a long, long time, and all of that comes with so much practice.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in watercolor, we used to say that a good painting shouldn't take longer than 3 hours because it loses its spontaneity. Now, that's obviously not high realism, right?
Yeah.
But it can lose its spontaneity if you. So, I mean, very often when I leave a painting for the day, it's at this level. When I come back in the next day and add more lights, it gets a harder feeling to it because the edges are harder, right? I would like to thank the 105 people who came out today to help me support Anova House. We raised just over $2,500 for it. Excellent. And the painting itself will be auctioned off again with all proceeds going to Anova House. Go to my website, SheilaDavis.artist, for a link for the online auction. And if you're interested in seeing any more demos or workshops, join up for my mailing list on my workshop page on my website. And I hope to see you soon. Thank you again for coming out.